Hey, good morning, everybody.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Rise in Mind. Welcome, welcome. Where the heck? You set up
Where the heck what?
You set up everything, and for some reason the Discord video is not there. There we go. I had to have the window open. Jeebus. Do everything right.
What did you say? Oh, there we are.
Welcome, welcome.
Full frame.
We are here with Ceara Comeau, independent filmmaker.
Yeah, we have a special show today. We have an interview. We've done this in the past, but this will be the first interview of level 3, and I'm excited. I really like film and filmmaking. I haven't done a lot in my personal life, so I'm really interested in hearing about this topic. So Matt, welcome in our guest here, and let's get rolling.
So Ceara, we've spoken before on before we recorded the show, before we actually started doing it as a real podcast, and back when it was a name that I should not have been using. Was apparently there's many podcasts that have the name Coffee and Contemplation. There is like 4. One of which is the official Stranger Things podcast is literally called Coffee and Contemplation. So I was like, I can't use this. So we spoke then about your writing. You're also an author, which is it's awesome that you're doing both. And
yeah, thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
You're welcome. Welcome onto the show. We are a independent operation ourselves. Like when it comes to, as you saw, like it's not the shine and polish because we have lives outside of this.
I get that.
Sometimes I'll watch a podcast that is like super overproduced and it turns me off a little bit actually. So tell me a little bit about yourself, like anything you're comfortable sharing.
So I initially started out as writing. I am an author of 10, almost 11 books. I started writing when I was really little, and probably around 12, and then I started self-publishing. For the filming part, that didn't come until like I would say maybe 3-ish years ago. I knew some people in the filmmaking industry who are also writers, and they kind of inspired me to do my own thing. And I remember one filmmaker that I knew through another author had mentioned to me. He said, and he wasn't trying to be mean or anything by saying this. He said, if you want your stories to turn into film, you're gonna have to do it yourself because no one's going to believe in your work as much as you do.
Ooh.
And that kind of hit me, and it hit me in a way that was like a positive and a negative at the same time, because in a way they were right that I need to tell the world why they should get so excited about my stuff. And so that's kind of like how my journey began. And I started meeting more people in the film industry through my writer friend, and that's kind of how everything began.
Awesome. That's amazing.
That's cool.
Yeah.
It's like kind of interesting how things just sort of blend into one another just as our lives progress.
I like what you were saying about like you have to be kind of behind your own project. If you want your stuff to be made into films, you have to be the driving force behind that. I used to do a lot of writing when I was younger too, and I've had kind of a block and a hard time figuring out how I want to translate some of my ideas on this project that I have coming. But I always ask myself, like, what's the intention, and like why do people care, and why do I care? Like there's a lot of stories out there, so you have to really, I guess, be invested, right? Like in the project.
Yeah, 100%. And that was kind of my thing. When I started writing my stories, I was really little, and a part of the reason I started writing was because in middle school I was getting bullied and I didn't have an outlet. So writing became my outlet, reading became my outlet, and I remember when I started writing, I would actually act out the scenes, act out what the characters were doing. I would go back in my yard and start acting all like whatever that character was doing, whether it was yelling or at that another person or whatever the situation was. And in the back of my head, I was like, I'm so glad I live in the middle of nowhere, so nobody's driving by can see me talking to myself. But that's like really where it began for me. And it was something that deep down I always had a passion for film. It was something that my dad kind of got me into. He got me into the writing and the filmmaking portion of everything. So I have to give him all the credit for that. But when I was younger, I didn't think it was possible. I didn't think it was possible for somebody to go from writing to filmmaking because I had it in my mind that you can only be one thing. And I guess came down to the concept of, how going from books to film, there's always that question of, oh, well, is the film going to be as good as the book or whatever the situation. There's always that kind of rivalry. And I kind of, in my head, was like, can I be both? Am I allowed to be both? Can I allow myself to be both? And that was kind of an internal fight at the very beginning of all this that I had to overcome because, yeah, you can do both. There's nothing wrong with doing both. And I think more authors who want to do that and put their film in or their books into film should do that because there really isn't anything stopping you. And
Nice.
that's kind of how I came about it. I said, you know what, it's fine to be both. There's nothing wrong with it. And once I overcame that mental hurdle, I really felt unstoppable almost.
Oh my goodness, yeah, that reminds me of when I was working on my first comic book. That first week where I had a convention coming up and I had to really get it done, or I was going to have nothing on my table at the convention except my prints again. I was like, I need something else. And when I actually achieved that, that feeling of feeling unstoppable, it's funny how I'm having so much trouble with issue 2 now. But at that time, how was I able to do that in a week? And it's taken me 2 years to do issue 2. It's interesting.
I can definitely relate to that because that's how I was with this last book I was writing. I had such a difficult time with the final book of the trilogy because there was a villain in it that was very opposite from what I've ever done in my past books, and it honestly made me stop writing for like 2.5 years, which is where I picked up filmmaking. And it wasn't until this past year that I said, this villain in some ways is me. All of these characters are me. They all come from my mind. Why am I letting myself stop myself from continuing this book when this book and this trilogy are kind of part of the film and the film series and the concept that I'm doing? And it's like you're only stopping yourself. And for me, it kind of was like an internal fighting that I had to overcome. It's like, okay, yeah, this is difficult, but just finish it. It doesn't have to be perfect. The first draft never has to be perfect. And so when I said, okay, I'm just going to keep going, it's the first edit, the first draft is going to be terrible, but it's okay. And so once I confirmed that in my mind, I ended up finishing the book, and that's when I contacted Matt here. I said, "Hey, I did a thing. Do you want to finish the covers of the series for me?"
Oh my goodness! Yeah, that was fun. Yeah, I got the chance to do the third book. Did I do every cover?
You did.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I did. Yeah.
Yes. It was so beautiful. Everything you did was absolutely gorgeous, and it was when I finally hit the end part, it was like a wave because that right there, I proved it to myself. Yes, you can do both. Yes, you can write and you can do film. And that it's like everything kind of just came all together, and it was the most satisfactory feeling that I personally had. And what's nice is the goal is for this last book to be launched at the same time the next 2 episodes of the films Amber Oak film series, because the trilogy and the film series actually are loosely.
Oh,
So yeah, it's crazy. The ending, yeah.
I do want to talk more about that later on. Actually, in that'd be a deep dive thing for sure. But we
let's do that.
For now, like I just want to sort of ask, like, what we normally do as part of the intro is like do kind of a check-in, like how are you feeling? What's been going on?
Oh my goodness. That's a very deep question.
Is it? Oh.
No, it's okay.
It's well, and here on Rise and Mind, we fully support like not saying like, oh, I'm fine, you know, like no, like say exactly how what you think and how you feel and what's been going on, because like this is we do focus a lot on mental health, so.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Honestly, it's been tough. I'm not gonna lie. It has been a tough start of the year. I can't say full details, but a lot of things have not been going as I originally planned, which that's just how life works. But I will say January I was sick literally the entire month, like flu the entire month, and I didn't fully get better until like the beginning of February, and that in itself was very tough. I got into a very depressive state. Definitely not gonna lie on that one. But it was like one of those months where if anything could have gone wrong, it went wrong. And it was so disheartening. It was a very tough month for sure for me. Um, February's gone a lot better, thank goodness. But it's been tough. It's been tough trying to get over mental hurdles, try to get over the mindset of, it's going to be okay, that mindset. That's been a very difficult thing, but I fortunately have an insanely amazing team. My family has been wonderful. My team is my family. My parents are my executive producers, and they are behind me 1,000,000%. Um, and my husband is like right next to me. He's always asking, like, helping me out, saying, "How can I help you with whatever film thing you need to do?" He's my editor for my book. He edits my scripts. And so and then I also have my 9 to 5 family, who are the most supportive 9 to 5 family I could ever have.
That's amazing.
So it's been really good. With support, honestly, that's what's been keeping me going. It's just the support that I've had for this. Like I said, it's been very difficult. There's been a lot of setbacks, but we've overcome them. But sometimes when you're in the middle of those setbacks, it's hard to see the bigger picture for sure. And that's when you just have to take a step back, relax, and kind of in that mind be like, okay, what can I do? What if it's to rest, like when I was sick, then rest. If I can do a little bit of something, do a little bit, but like not push yourself. And that's something that I've had this past month to learn, is to not push myself beyond my means. And in the filmmaking industry, where everything is going so fast and there's so much to be done.
Oh damn, yeah. They're pumping out stuff so fast now. Like,
for sure. Yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
A little too fast, in my opinion.
And more to what you were saying before, like it's really great to hear that you have a support system and that like it's serving you well. I mean, we hear about a lot of people. Oh, good, you have an orange coffee cup. Something with orange on it.
Right.
So we try to theme with the orange and the red, and
these are official Ram mugs.
Yeah,
you can only find them apparently at Goodwills,
or thrift stores.
We'll find the whole set someday.
So I found that mug for him.
Matt gifted me this
at a Goodwill, and then this was at a thrift store somewhere, and I'm like, well, that's kind of on brand. Like we're just gonna have like the same stuff. Anyway, yeah, the support system is so important. Like CP was just saying earlier how he's got his wife who's like really supportive and helps him out with like the stream and stuff, and and I have Inky here who just sits here and looks cute, but it's surprising how much that does. And then, like, of course, I have my partner who's very supportive, and it's like it seems like I work in homelessness as my day job, and 90
I like that.
no,
That was backwards. I
no,
love that I work in homelessness.
no, the
I
segue,
just want that T-shirt.
the segue is the segue is that they don't have a support system like that.
Yeah.
That's how they ended up there. My almost 90% of the time, it's a lack of community that does it to someone. So like to hear like, yeah, things are tough, but we have, we get by with a little help from our friends and family.
Sure.
Yeah.
I always find it exciting to hear when you have that connection with parents.
Yes.
I've always had support with friends and certain, uncles or whatever. You'll find people that'll support you. But my folks, not that they don't support me, they just don't have the interest in they don't understand art or writing, and they like movies, but they're not going to sit there and talk about the film afterwards, like in a way that like, oh, what were the themes, or what'd you find interesting about this, the camera work, that's too far beyond. So I find that to be like really interesting that you have that connection. What do you find that's like, good and bad? I'm sure there's probably bad stuff too, where there's a criticism like, oh no, this could be changed, a critique.
Oh my goodness. Actually, now that you mention it, so my parents are 100% involved with this filmmaking and even writing as well, to the point where they're almost always on set too. Like they're
Okay.
helping on set and they're helping off set. Like they're my executive producers. But my dad is also my set designer. So I will
Cool.
give him an idea and he'll be like, I'm already on it. Like he already has an idea. Like I remember mentioning to him about some set designs I just briefly mentioned to him for this coming season, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I already got stuff." I'm like, "Wait, what?" Like
That's
they're
great.
like
Oh my
they're
goodness.
100% like involved. My mom is the caterer, so she caters for on-set stuff. She also is my manager in the sense where she's involved with premieres, she's involved with film festivals, and she's like, and it was great because my parents, they didn't know anything at all about the filmmaking industry, and it's sort of like me, like just jumping into it. But I honestly, I'm amazed of their support, just because they flat out said, we don't know what's going on, but if you tell us and show us what you want, we're in on it. And so what I do after I do an edit for the film, like if when I'm done editing an episode, I bring it to them and I show them and my husband, and their critiques are wonderful. Like sometimes they don't fully understand it and they'll have to rewatch it again because a lot of my films are a little bit on the complex side. But they make a 110% effort to fully understand it. They'll say, "Hey, I like this camera angle, but do you have another clip because this is XYZ?" They really get involved, and especially my dad, he'll like if we're on set and he's on set too, like sometimes he'll use a slate, he'll help me with a slate, or he'll help me with something electronic related.
For those at home,
He'll
what is a slate?
So a slate is a clapper. So like right before you film a scene,
Ah.
you'll say, "Oh, this is the episode name, this is the take, this is the shot," and then you slap it or you clap it because the clapper helps also with the audio, so you know which take it is because your audio is separate from your camera. And so I taught him how to do that as well.
That's
I told him what I
cool.
wanted to do. And so he's like, well, tell me, he'll sometimes if he's not sure about a clip, like he'll watch the playback with me and he'll be like, "Hey, maybe we could do something different because this looks good, but just to let you know, there was something in this clip that might not work with this." And it's like my parents are
Oh my
so
goodness.
invested in this.
God, that
I don't
support
know. I
system's
wouldn't
so
be
beautiful.
Yeah, I wouldn't be where I am without their help. And I also have my best friend Veronette March, who's also an actress, and she helped me pull me out of a very dark place when I even first started filmmaking. When I first started, I didn't have a lot of support in the sense of people who knew the industry, but she jumped headfirst into it and said, "Hey, let me help you. Let me help you get started." And I met her through that filmmaker slash writer friend, and because we were acting together in an episode in a show, and she's like, "I want to help you. I want to help you get yourself going." And I still, to this day, we still talk. We still talk about movies that we've watched. We still chat about the characters and the actors, and I sometimes I still even will reach out to her, ask her for advice, because she's been in more productions than I have filmed. So it's like I want her intake. So having that kind of support, I it's a truly a blessing, like a universal blessing. I don't know where I'd be without my support group.
That's so awesome. Nice. I'm glad that we kind of got into this just from asking how you are. It's beautiful. I mean, it's for me, like my mind goes full bore into like the bigger picture, and like, how are you? Everything's terrible. But that's not the answer. That's not the answer to how I am. Like that's not the real answer.
Right.
Everything's awful.
Matt,
no, how are you?
Matt, you were sick too. Matt had every sickness.
I was. Oh my god, I had everything.
He was collecting them like Pokemon.
So this is. I hope this phrase catches on. But I had everything but the kitchen sink. The kitchen sink being COVID. I had everything but that.
Gosh. Oh my gosh.
People around me were getting COVID, but I had pneumonia, and then I had a stomach flu, and then I had the regular flu, and then the common cold, and then a severe allergic reaction, all in a row. Like that was the order. Yeah.
Wow.
And did you know that pneumonia can produce an allergic reaction?
Wow.
Oh, cool.
And it can extend it. Like you basically become allergic to your own defense against it. It's like, what the heck is happening? Now, why do I have to take friggin' allergy meds at the same time as my antibiotics? I never knew that that's a thing.
That's badass. That's a strong one.
So that's sort of like the everything is terrible reaction was from that for the most part.
And that's difficult too, especially when you are that sick to that point of illness. If you naturally have like seasonal depression, or you have mental health issues, if your whole body is sick, everything else goes down too.
Oh, yeah.
It's so hard. It's so difficult. That's where I was in the end of December. I wound up in the emergency room with influenza A, and I have never had that before, and I was out of work for a week. Fortunately, I had coverage, but it was awful. It was absolutely terrible. I'm like, am I dying? Like that was my first thought. Like it was so terrible. And then my mental state went down, and it was just like, okay, please universe, don't let this be an omen for how the rest of my year is gonna go.
Oh heck, respiratory.
Yeah.
I had to look it up. I was like, what?
Yeah, it was bad. It's like you have the stomach bug and you have a cough at the same time. And it was like anything I took, my body wouldn't take it. It was so horrible. And I'm like, okay, this is not a good start to the year.
Yeah, I ended up throwing up some of my antibiotics, and I thought, oh crap, yeah. I'm gonna miss a dosage because of this. And I called the doctor, and they're like, no, you should be fine. I'm like, okay.
Right.
Yeah. So CP,
it's fine. Just sleep it off.
CP, how are you doing? How's your week been?
Oh, pretty good. Oh, and on the sickness thing, I'm lucky. I don't really ever get sick, but this January, I got that with norovirus or whatever.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, both the missus and I ended up getting that, and she had it for a while, and I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna dodge the bullet like I always do. But then all of a sudden I didn't feel good, and I woke up in the middle of the night. It's like, well, I'm staying home tomorrow, and it was gone a day later. And I was like, oh, well, that was cool. I'm fine. Most people sick about a week on this. I'm lucky here.
Yeah.
It only went away for one day, and then it came back worse for like 2 or 3 days. I was like, what did
you call yourself that one time you said that I'm the toxic avenger or something? Because like you're just immune to so many things.
Yeah, I'm toxic, man. I've failed at so many poisons and chemicals. I can't get sick. I just say stuff like that.
It's the thing about being in contract construction. You do.
Dude,
you encounter a little bit of every chemical, every disease, every type of dirt, every type of dirty that you can encounter. You encounter when you're doing construction.
It's awful, man. Well, I mean, mainly right now, a lot of the beginning of the year, as far as how I'm doing, is I took on a big job, one of the biggest jobs.
Yeah.
I'm self-employed. I work by myself, and I do a lot of small stuff. And this is the biggest like interior painting job that I ever got, and I've been there a couple months, and so there's some stresses about making sure that's on time. Trouble is, it was during the holidays, and then my customer got sick, and then there was a visit from family that she had up, and then I got sick, so trying to keep the time frame, and yeah, there's some stress there. And then working with these chemicals and whatnot, I have a rash here just from tub surround caulking. This stuff's just so nasty, and toxic, and like, I can't imagine the chemicals just leached into my system. That's why I say I'm just filled with poison, and it's scary, but that's the nature of the work. There's not much you can do sometimes, but overall, it was a blessing really to have something like this come in, because I needed something that was financially more stable for the winter, and much like you were mentioning about the writing, you have to motivate yourself when you're self-employed. No one's gonna wake up beside you, maybe in your support group, and say, "Hey, go out there and write your story," and it's 8:00, clock in, like I have a hard time telling my customers when I'm going to show up around 9.
CP, it's time for the podcast.
Yeah, you just kind of roll with things, and everything I do is self-driven. And anyone who's watched the show knows this, but me to you, I have really rampant ADHD. I got diagnosed just a few years ago. I lived with it my whole life. And I made a code. I realized my father, in hindsight, he was self-employed too. He created a code that worked to fight ADHD. And I looked at it. I've been thinking about everything that he's done now, how he writes stuff down, how he doesn't throw things out. I go, oh my God, he's creating a visual record of everything. He's got all his days written. It's not in like some Word document. It's just a number for the hours of the day written on a physical calendar. He keeps all the paint cans from the job so he can count them up at the end.
Oh, wow.
It's recognizing everything in reality as a physical object, which is something that ADHD people struggle with. He figured out a way around it by not eliminating it. And I was like, that's how I've probably been dealing with it all these years. But it's a tricky thing, and self-employment is both a good thing for having that kind of mindset, because you can think outside of the box. You can push yourself to work really long hours, but motivation and getting on top of things is really tricky.
That's part of why we do the mental health podcast section too. We do talk a lot about ADHD because I also am diagnosed and medicated for it, so we do talk a lot about that. So just a fair warning, Ceara.
No, that's no problem.
Not warning, but you know what I mean.
Matt got the privilege of knowing that he had it.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to see, we're a difference in age, and how the medical system
the same but different
kind of wanted to like push, like in my day it was like, if you were having a moment in class, you were just a jerk, Get out of here.
To me, it's like,
it up,
I grew up in the time period of that boy ain't right. Yeah. So if you guys are ready, we'll go into the breaking ground here. We'll get down to some of the more nitty gritty of like, this is gonna seem I don't know what the word is exactly. Not condescending, pedantic. No, what's the word? I don't know. What I do is let's just go into the breaking ground intro, and then you'll see. Righty.
Breaking ground.
Oops, I forgot. I'm supposed to go to this button. There. All right. So now we're in breaking ground. Sans the logo because it's easier just to go back to the interview panel. What we do is what is film? Like, what is filmmaking? What even is it? Like, we just got to the world and we don't know what this is. See, what is film? It's a series of moving images that tells a story, conveys ideas, or evokes emotions. Films are also known as movies, motion pictures, or moving pictures. I'm not going to go into the next part of that because we're talking to someone who makes them, so we're not going to read off how they're made. But I do want to see if there's a distinction between film making. Okay, never mind. It was going to answer the same exact question. So as part of breaking ground, though, let's get down to like the very beginning of like what was the moment that you knew you wanted to start making movies? Like what actually inspired you to do that?
Oh my goodness. I really couldn't put a place on it because I think it's something that I've always wanted to do, and as I said earlier, it was one of those things that I felt like I had to fight against because in my head I always thought if I'm a writer, I couldn't be a filmmaker because there is always such a stigma about going from books to film. And in
Oh.
my head I'm like there was like when in my world and in the writing world there is that stigma about going from if you're a writer and you're trying to put your books to film, there's the concept of, oh well, the film's not going to be as good as the books, or maybe the film will be better than books. And I think it's a stigma that nobody really talks about, but we all know it's kind of a there. And in my head I'm like, well, if I'm the writer and I make the script, then nobody can argue that it's good or it's bad or it's better than the book or whatnot because I'm fully involved with it. And that was kind of my thinking going into filming. Um, for when I wanted to be a filmmaker, I think that really began when I was I was younger. Because when I first started writing, I didn't really do a lot of descriptions in my stories. It was just point A to point B. I didn't really know how to exactly write, and I remember my cousin. She was a filmmaker at the time, and she was the one who kind of inspired me. Because I saw what she was doing. I watched her on set, and she took one of my really early scripts or stories and turned it into a script. And she told me, she says, "Hey, this is very much like a screenplay, and you're really good at that because there wasn't really a lot of descriptions, and in a script you don't write a lot of descriptions. You write the bare bones, you write the dialogue, you write where the location is, but you leave a lot of it to the imagination based off of where you're going to get the location for filming." And I remember that when she said that, I'm like, I kind of like this. And it was that moment when I was 15 where we went through the whole process. She got a bunch of her friends together, and the original story that I wrote, did not make a lick of sense. It made absolutely no sense, but
Oh.
she still loved it. She still said, "Hey, let's just do it. Let's just do it for fun." And we premiered it in a local theater, and it was, I think at that moment I realized, one day I want my stories, my Amber Oak stories, to turn into a film. And
Oh.
from that moment on, I think what I was trying to do was trying to work towards that goal with the the mindset in the back of my mind that it might not happen.
Okay.
And that wasn't until that I met another fellow writer slash filmmaker where I'm like, well, why not? Why can't it happen? And so that's kind of where it's for me.
Were there any films in particular that inspired you as well? Like any like films like growing up, or things that maybe even just shows, or even I maybe probably not commercials, but who knows? You know, short films.
Yes. Yes.
That Folgers commercial back in the 90s with Peter really inspired me to want to make film, heartwarming Christmas films about Folgers.
Actually, there is one. There's one series that inspired me, and it was a series that my dad actually got me into. When I was really young, I was probably a little bit too young to watch it, just because there's a lot of scary elements for a little kid like me. But it's actually now on Disney Plus, and it's called So Weird.
Weird.
And it's it's so weird. And it's essentially about this girl who solves all of these weird mysteries, paranormal, alien like, just different mysteries, but she also has a backstory of like her personal history. And that series, with the episodes that I remember, stuck so hardcore with me that I was like, I want to do something like that, but on a bigger scale. And it was honestly the first two seasons were excellent, and then they switched the main character out after like, I don't know, like 20 episodes or so, and then it kind of just, it didn't, the series kind of died out from there. But it was something that always inspired me, especially the very first episode. And they did a lot. This was back in the like 98 into early 2001-ish. And they had a lot of good special effects and like visual effects too,
Patrick
for
Levi.
that time period.
I just looked it up, and and holy crap, these are some actors and actresses that are like, I know them much older than they were in this. CP, if you should look it up on your phone or something. I'm not sure how I could share it to you, but it's definitely like from that. What year was it? Did you say? It doesn't say here.
It started, I think, in 98, I want to say, and
So
then
weird.
and then it ended in 2001-ish,
Like
approximately.
the web page, the So Weird web page that she's looking at, and it looks like the SCP stuff that's coming out now, like the SCP Foundation things. It's like, what did you see? Was it, how weird was it? Like, and then there's images of like this ghost creature. Like, that's cool. And I see, like, I've seen a little bit of your Amber Oak series. I haven't watched a full episode yet. I apologize. It's been really hectic, but I do see the style at least reflected. Like, it seems like you're trying to go for the same style. You even got that.
For sure.
How did you do the? So like these older shows have that hazy sort of filmmaking look to them, like the glow effect that light has. You did a little bit of that in yours too, didn't you?
I did a little bit of that for the special effects. I did a little bit of the glow whenever somebody is using magic. I add a little bit of the glow. It's very basic glow, but I don't have access to a huge special effects program, so there was very minimal that I could do, but I wanted to keep it. I wanted to take us back to that time period where there were so many good shows during the late 90s, early 2000s that have been long forgotten. And that was kind of one of my things, is that I kind of want to bring those effects back because there was a lot of good storyline. And nowadays, a lot of the plots and script writing are, in some cases, especially you know, things that are being rewritten, and it's like, why can't we come up with new things? Let's bring back the 90s.
That's the crazy thing, is
great stuff.
In the 90s it seemed like we had great writing but not very good tech, and now we have amazing tech and the writing is garbage.
Right. Exactly. And I'm like, and that was the thing, and that's what I wanted to change, because I'm like, I mean, I'm an independent filmmaker, and I'm on I'm on, a micro budget. So basically, my money for this filming comes from my 9 to 5. Like, that's almost all of it comes from my 9 to 5. And, or my executive producers, my parents help me out sometimes too,
Yep.
depending on the situation. But it's like, in my mind, I was like, why can't we combine great script writing but also add some cool special effects? And I'm like, I don't see why we can't. I mean, it might take a little bit longer, and there are some things that I'm still learning in terms of special effects.
Oh,
But I was like, you know what, why not? Let's see what we can do. And it's one of my favorite parts of it is to see the final result and to say, oh, that works so well. I loved it.
that's awesome.
Mhm.
So I have another question. Hold on. Okay. So, like, that's one of the things that inspired you. Did any other movies or shows inspire you? Before we go on to the next question, anything else
I
come to
would
mind?
Oh, for sure. I am a Harry Potter fan. I will always be a fan of the world of Harry Potter. And that's when I was younger. I ate up all the books. I love them so much. I love the concept and the world. I love the storyline. I liked the in-depth character developments. And to me, it was just like it inspired me to try to be a better writer in the sense of describing things more, creating my own world. And so that was my inspiration in terms of world building.
Oh, fantastic! And those are really well developed worlds too. Sorry, go
Hmm.
ahead, CP.
But I was older when Harry Potter came out, but I went and I watched the movies as they came out, and I was really impressed with something because I was a big Home Alone fan, and to see Chris Columbus start directing those first two movies, and to have John Williams score, to have that kind of friendlier vibe that Home
Yeah.
Alone had, and then for it to shift into something so tonally dark.
Hmm.
That was I was an '80s kid, so like it's Trauma City, like Never Ending Story, all these movies that I grew up with.
Never ending story, yes.
They're terrifying,
Yeah.
and that's what inspired me. So it was weird to see it kind of coming full circle back
Hmm.
into, oh, this film's not like really, or book series isn't scared to go into a dark territory, which I think is important
Hmm. Oh, yeah.
for kids. In Disney, things of being sympathized a lot
Yeah.
more. Not that there's not gray area to
Right.
characters, but every once in a while you just need to show the people that things can get
Hmm.
pretty intense out there. But
Hmm.
despite that, there's still ways around it.
Oh, for sure.
Mm.
That's kind of how I am with my film series is we started off very similarly with the same vibe as the Harry Potter series. Everything was you knew there was something dark going on, but you're not exactly sure what, but you're still solving these mysteries and meeting friends. And then slowly and gradually we start getting little snippets of the main villains of my Amber Oak series. And I didn't want I wanted the audience to kind of grow up with Amber in that sense. I wanted them to not know anything before she does, with a few minor exceptions. In my mind, it's not fun if you know everything before. Hate that. It's like even if it's predictable, it's like no, 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 no. Because if you do that, you take a character, you take a person out of the story, you take the viewer out of the story, and then it's like, what's there left to watch if they already can guess everything? So there's a lot of plot twists to my storyline, and we're doing 4 seasons, and each season we go progressively towards that darker side, but you also get a little bit of the light within that darkness. It's not just
Oh,
straight up dark. You have a little bit of hope and a little bit of light, but it's not just like, oh, everything is great, even though it's a problem.
yeah.
No, they acknowledge there's a problem.
We have
They
a whole.
acknowledge there's, you know,
Sorry, we have a whole episode on that, by the way. Like
oh, wow.
finding light within the darkness and like why
Yeah.
it's important
Oh
to
yeah.
celebrate
Oh,
both.
sweet. Yes,
So for those of you listening, check out the YouTube channel. There's some on there. Here, if you want
love
to
it.
see it, it's there as well. Um,
Sure.
When did we do that? Was that last season?
That was level 1, actually.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so that was when the audio was screwed up beyond belief.
Yeah.
Which is like, that was before I knew.
You have to start somewhere. Is our first draft, right?
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Sure.
It gets you somewhere though.
All right, so Ceara, I kind of cut you off there.
Oh no, it's okay.
I don't know if you wanted to finish your thought there, or if you were ready for the next question.
Oh, we're ready for the next question. Absolutely.
So your first film that you ever made, was it Amber Oak?
Mm-hmm.
And what was that experience like when you first started?
Well,
I guess to follow up the question to help you out, do you look back on it with pride? Is it something you'd rather keep buried?
a little bit of both.
Oh,
Actually, it's a mixture because we faced every challenge you possibly could imagine with episode 1. From tech not working on the day it's supposed to, from batteries not charging, from trying
oh my God,
suck the life out of batteries as much as I can, to actors not showing up and having to replace an actor 4 times.
oh my God.
To
Can you dig it a little?
difficult.
I want to know a little bit more about what it's like working with people who like didn't show up like after they said they would for a movie, like for filming a movie.
They get replaced.
You get replaced. It's crazy to me. It's just like my mind was gonna focus on that if we didn't like at least touch on it a little bit.
Oh sure,
It's crazy to me.
Yeah, well, it was for this one specific role, and our first option got a better offer, so they quit within through I think about a month or 2 before we started shooting. The other person that we chose was I didn't know the person and I didn't really talk to them, but it was somebody that could do the role. They didn't realize how far the location was for them, so they turned around halfway to the location. Um, and then the other person, I don't remember. I know they were not able to finish filming for some reason or another. And then we ended up finally filming um, with my husband. My husband ended up doing the role because he knew the character so well.
Nice.
And that was probably the most challenging. It's like, honestly, that's how the industry works. If you're not able to appear, then you will be replaced. And it's one of those things where it's like, I'm a perfectionist, so in my head, I'm always thinking I want things to be done a certain way. And in my head, I'm also thinking if somebody wants the role, then perhaps, they'll show up, but that doesn't always work because circumstances happen. Sometimes people lose interest, and I get it. It does happen, but you have to still keep moving on. As they always say, the show must go on. So that's what we have to do. And I'm always saying, there's always somebody out there. If somebody doesn't want to continue on, that's fine. We'll find a replacement because there's actors always looking for roles, for jobs. And fortunately, those things happen. And one of those things that I've had to learn is, yes, it's okay to want something, but sometimes the universe has better plans, and you have to just roll with it. And that's so difficult for me to, as an artist who has plans, has a set way of doing things. It's hard to adapt, but if there's anything filmmaking has taught me is the adaptability portion. So that was the hardest thing, but from that point I realized if I can make it through all of these actors not showing for their role, then maybe I can do it. And that's not the first time we've had every episode so far, well, with the exception of current episode, because we just started with the audition process and stuff for this coming film season, we've had something acting wise go wrong where somebody quits and we had to adapt very quickly. And sometimes we've had to adapt, like one of the last episodes, we had to adapt at that moment. And sometimes you have to adapt while you're filming, and that's so challenging. And especially when the first episode, when I really didn't have a lot I had no experience as a filmmaker. I've only ever been an actress or PA, and so I didn't really have experience with people not showing up to set. And so that was such a difficult thing for me to overcome. And, then you have that, then sometimes, you sometimes will have difficult actors. Fortunately, we haven't had difficult actors to like on set, like those that we've hired who have filmed. We haven't had any difficulties with that. Fortunately, we're very grateful for that. Very fortunate. But yeah, episode 1, anything that could have gone wrong went wrong, for sure.
Oh, yeah.
But honestly, I am so grateful it all happened episode 1 because it prepared me for the rest of the series. It prepared me for all the this could happen, this could happen, this could happen. And so, like, even though I have that in my mind, anxiety, I'm like, well, these things could go wrong, but we've overcome things like that before. And I didn't have a good camera for episode 1, unfortunately, because I was not prepared to do the filming portion. I was prepared to direct, but I was not prepared to do the filming portion. I was at the time hoping to have assistance in the technology department, and I didn't get it in time for filming. So I said, you know what? I'll do it myself. I'll figure out how to do it myself. So I am a self-taught filmmaker.
Do it my damn self. Yep.
Honestly, it was, and I think it's made me a better artist and a better creator. And I might not be doing it exactly right, how colleges and stuff would teach you, but it so far has worked for me. And if I learn new techniques along the way, I'll adapt. But I'm very grateful for all of the hiccups and for all of the bumps in the road and for all the mountains I've had to climb to get to where I am now, because I would not be the filmmaker I am today without those moments. So honestly, it's hard to say, but I do look back on episode 1 with intense pride, because it showed me that if you can overcome 4 people quitting, difficult, sometimes difficult people on the sidelines, cameras malfunctioning, not a good camera to work with, batteries dying, rain constantly. Yeah, it rained constantly, and we filmed outside 90%.
Wow.
So honestly, I say, yeah, I'm very proud of how it turned out, all things considered.
Good. I relate to that a lot. Do you have anything, CP?
Yeah, with filmmaking, I have very little experience, but I find it's a world of just complete chaos that's happening all the time, and you have to really be able to roll with stuff very well and work in a way that's really not like a lot of the other arts.
Right.
Matt and I have the luxury, if we're trying to create something, we're doing it inside. It's warm.
Yeah.
but when you have these certain things in mind, I worked with this filmmaker, independent guy. I went to school with him, and he would just ask me like, "Oh, could you help me shoot these things?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'd love to. I've always been interested in this." But wow, what an experience, because you're working against elements. You're working against the time, because you have to go to a location sometimes.
The lighting changes over time. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Well, and they're not always the same area. You take these things for granted, where someone's walking through an environment and it's like, oh, this is the same place. Well, it's probably a composite of a lot of different shots.
Sorry,
yes,
CP.
Sure.
You said someone's walking through an environment, and then walked by right after.
That's
right
funny.
After. Oh my god, that's great.
That was perfect. That was perfect.
That was a well-timed.
It was
joke.
great. Yeah, it was good.
Great.
Planned it.
But when you have to deal with, say, a certain continuity, it's a certain time of the day, and it's overcast, and now you're trying to make all these composite shots. I mean, you could do stuff digitally, but back in the day, and a lot of people don't have a big budget, you just have to wait until it's that lighting and that time or close to it, and figure out how you can link these shots together. And and then you, like, I didn't even know how to use the camera. He's like, do like this snap focus, and I'm like, what, really? And then like move out and then pull this in, and I kept messing it up. So then the time's going on, and now it's getting darker, and it's pretty intense of the moment. You have to really be able to roll with some stuff and be super focused. I think sometimes where it's like,
Oh,
all
yeah.
right, we got to get out, do this, and with all those clashing energies, it's it makes for quite a fun environment from what I see, and that's only us working with me and my friend. I can't imagine if you've got someone holding lights or multiple actors.
Gosh darn it, Jeff! Hold the boom mic steady.
Right? Oh, I've told him that before. I have had to tell him.
Is it Jeff?
I have, Jeffrey. Yeah, I've had to tell him, like, okay, no, you need to have the mic right at their face.
I just realized I use Jeffrey as a stand-in for like every character. So, oh my God, your husband's name is. That's right. Sorry, I didn't mean to insult your husband.
It's perfect because that's literally what I've had to say to him. Like, I've had to be like, honey, I love you, but you need to put that mic right in their face. They need to be eating the mic. It's like,
I forget that for my microphone too, actually, that it should be here. It should be, but I don't like it being here. It feels like I'm eating it. Like I don't know. But I still push it away because I'm like, no, too close.
Yeah.
Just a little side note. I love like just bad, schlocky like Canon films and things like that, where you're just like you count the amount of times that boom mic's just doop,
yes,
drop it into frame, boom.
Oh my goodness. And it's funny because at the end of the day, all you can really do is laugh and be like, okay, I'll just zoom in on the characters. It's fine.
It's fine. We'll just zoom in. It's in editing. Yeah.
And so, I mean, fortunately and unfortunately, I actually don't have a very large crew. My husband, Jeffrey, does the boom sound equipment. I do my lighting. I do the camera. In some cases, I even do the slate board. Sometimes we don't even do a slate board because we don't have enough people. I lug my equipment around. Fortunately, this past season, we had 2 extra people on hand to help, but I don't always have that ability. So the one thing I've had to learn is how to do it all. I've had to learn how to do the boom. I've learned how to do the lighting. I've learned how to do the camera. And I now have a new camera for these last 2 episodes. And I had to teach myself how to do that, which was completely different than the camera I had been using for episode 1. And so it's and then I do my own editing, and then I do my own, sound effects, and visual effects too, with adding magic and stuff whenever magic is needed. And a lot of it, like I said, is adaptability. You have to sometimes learn as you on set that minute. Because one of the things that I hate is I hate wasting people's time. I hate wasting the actor's time and the crew's time. So I'm always prompt. I'm always on time because we all have lives. We all have things that we need to do. And some people are going from set to set. They're not just staying with me all day. They're going to their next filming location. And so I take into consideration there too.
Yeah. That's what blows my mind about the big productions. You hear about these people who their only thing that they have that day to do is the movie, and they still don't show up to film. It's like
that's the thing.
It's like
that's
what is well, I mean in like the big productions where that's like your whole life is the filmmaking, and I just can't imagine being late to set when that's the only thing I do in my life.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting for sure. And especially when you have big productions like that, though, they have somebody readily available for backup. When you're an independent filmmaker like myself,
no backup.
Nope, you have no backup.
Damn.
So you have to kind of do what you can. So say you're planning to film a scene and somebody doesn't even show up, or maybe they show up super, super late. You're already filming the next scene without them. You're filming. Sometimes I've had to film an actor having a dialogue with another actor who wasn't even there. And they just I have a stand-in or somebody to feed them the lines, because, with the independent film industry, you don't have a lot of time. You have less time than the bigger Hollywood film industries have, because you also are on a tighter budget as well. So you don't have that kind of time to waste waiting for somebody to show up. So in those cases, say the person doesn't show up. We've had that happen before, and say they've filmed other scenes, but they didn't show up for the specific scene. I've had to make up that specific scene without them. I had to make it up on the spot. I had to figure it out right then and there. And it actually, in those moments, worked out better than my original plan with the actor. So it worked out regardless. But those things happen, and I don't think, and there's a lot of people who don't know the independent film industry, and we don't have that kind of luxury as Hollywood does. We are on a tight schedule. We have other plans that usually that night to upload our footage or to get ready for the next day's scene. Sometimes we can't even get to set until they open the next day because some of the places you rent out, they're not open until that day of. So you have to go in already with a plan to get your stuff set up, get props set up, get equipment set up. And so I think it's a lot more stressful. I mean, I feel like, every film industry will have their own set of stresses, obviously, but I think independently speaking, we have a lot more because it's just us. It's just us as filmmakers. This is the time allotted we have.
Oh my God.
And it does get scary sometimes. There have been a few moments in some episodes where I'm like, is this going to even keep going?
Oh,
Are
wow.
we going to even be able to keep doing this?
That's a scary thought.
It is. And that's why whenever I see an actor putting their 110% into the role, showing up on time, being in character, being off book, off script, I value that so much because that tells me they're invested, and that tells me they also respect my time too. And I appreciate that because it's like, I'm going to respect your time, please respect my time. And so it's kind of one of those things where but unfortunately, like I've said, not everybody has that mental state and that mentality, and it's one of those things you just have to adapt to, and adapt to the understanding that not everybody's going to have the same vision that you have. And I've learned that, and it's okay. We will keep going.
I don't know if, Matt, you really know this part of it. It kind of threw me over the years. Like when I started learning more about film's not ever linear. Nope. Like their idea in the script is, but you're always going back and forth and just piecing it together. And a lot of times people know more about how they want it to end, and they end up shooting the last scenes first. And then like they structure more complicated scenes, and then it's like oh, today, like, oh, this didn't work out and the lighting's right for this, so let's fill this in. And like you're saying about making up a scene because the actor's not there. You run into that kind of happy accident with either
I love
with either staff or actor, or even sometimes just your shot. You're like, oh, I needed it to be like this, but I didn't know the sun would break in the overcast for this second while they were saying this line. And sometimes, it's just luck. And unfortunately, that's where a lot of the computer stuff gets lost, because it's, people will digitally add that moment in, but to be a filmmaker and to capture these things live, it's a real happy accident.
Yeah, I know that I knew going into filmmaking that nothing was ever filmed linear, and how I do it is I do it more based on who needs to show up to set and when. Like if somebody has a bunch of solos, I'll have them come in the morning or something. Or if there's two people that need to be there, I'll have them come for 2 days, or whatever the case may be. Because again, I'm also, the one thing I'm focusing on is making sure they're not just sitting around wasting their time. That's the one most important thing in my book. So I base all my schedules around who needs to be on set and when. Just because, like, and you're also dealing, like, for me, I also deal sometimes with kids too, so legally speaking they can only work so many hours as well. So I have to make sure that, okay, they're there this time, and this is how much they're filming, they're going to have lunch at this time. So you have to make sure about that as well, to make sure you're within the legal standards. So whenever it's like schedule time, that's what I think, like, okay, how, and it's harder, especially when you're dealing with like action scenes and there's a bunch of people. It's like, okay, there's a lot of shots that need to be done here. How am I going to best utilize this time that I'm given? Like, one of the scenes for this coming filming season for one episode, one scene is literally going to probably take a day to film. So I literally blocked out that entire 8-9 hour day to film that one scene in this one location.
Damn.
Because it is a very intense scene, and I don't want my actors to feel rushed, because if they feel rushed, they're not going to do a good, their best work. And I want to make sure they're comfortable and they feel that they can get into character. So yeah, those are some of the things you got to keep in mind.
Damn. So like,
yeah, it's mind blowing. Like you say, it takes so much longer than people realize.
The weather.
I remember helping my friend record just two scenes. We worked all day, like at least 8 hours. We were busy all day, and it was probably like 15 seconds worth of film, like that would be used.
Yeah.
In his actual film, but it just for that, because of moving to locations, getting things right, waiting for certain elements, like the way that the time had to be. It was amazing. I was like, we worked 8 hours for 15 seconds, and so I could understand that, like, it's taken for granted,
For sure.
I'm blown away by the amount the environment will matter. Like, if it starts raining, if it's colder than usual, the actors are getting antsy and they're actually getting like uncomfortably cold, or if it's too hot, everyone's getting uncomfortably warm. Like, the amount of people you have to deal with, how tempers can rise when things aren't going right, like the actual weather, the time of day. Like, the more that you guys were talking about this, the more I was thinking of variables that could make it a nightmare.
Oh yeah, Matt, absolutely.
Matt, you're one step closer to becoming that annoying person watching the movie,
Oh god.
Like, hey, you find out where all those mess ups are. You learn to detect them. Oh, that's ADR. Oh, that's a different location. They couldn't match that. Oh, what are they doing there? Oh, boom.
there's a boom.
Are you even watching the movie anymore? Yeah, it's just a different version. I'm watching it from the perspective of the art filmmaker.
Yes. I do that all the time. It just comes automatically at this point.
So
if your story gets a little bit boring, then that's where I'm going.
I have one question before we go to the deep dive.
Sure.
We're fine on time, but trying to think. It's probably gonna be a big question. Is all I'm saying.
Okay.
What is is there a specific technique that you've learned while filmmaking that has become your favorite, that you tend to fall back on many times?
Ooh, that's a big question.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think. So one of my favorite things about filmmaking is the emotion behind the character, the emotion behind what's going on. And one of the things that I tend to do more often than not is focus heavily on the actor's eyes, because you can tell a lot about a person and their emotional state, even if they're acting, based on their eyes. So I love falling back on close-up shots. If I can do close-up shots as much as possible, I love it. Because, say, for example, I do a mid shot just of this person, and then do another mid shot of another person, and then I do a wide shot to show both of them. Say something doesn't work in any of those three shots, but you capture something in the look that one person gives the other person. You can use that, and you can insert that in that scene to pull the audience in on the emotion. I always look for, it sounds weird, but I'm always looking for the eyes whenever I'm watching a film.
That's good.
Because that's what we connect with. And I think as human beings, that's what we connect with, is each other's eyes. Whenever you're looking at somebody, you can see in their eyes almost what they're thinking, at the very least, what they're feeling. And I always find that fascinating. And you can always tell, like, say somebody is playing a deceptive role and they're trying to lie to their scene partner for whatever reason is in the script. If they're in that right frame of mind with the dialogue, you can see that. You can see the lie. And that's what's beautiful, because it's like they're not really lying in real life, but they're acting it. And so I love the eyes.
It's like a double lie almost, because you're acting, but then you're lying as the character.
Oh yeah, man.
Right, exactly. Exactly. And if you get the lighting right on the person's close up, you can also enhance what it is they're feeling if you have the lighting correct.
I like that.
One scene that we did this past year with one of my leads, he had to be angry, and he's not a normally angry individual. He's a very kind and gentle soul, and he's so kind.
Just
he's
a baby.
So nice. He's such a sweetheart. I love working with him, but he had to get super angry at his scene partner, and it was hard for him to get to that point, because he's like, I would not yell at this individual if this was in real life. But when you add the lighting just right and add harsh shadows on his face, you saw that anger. Even if it was a fake anger, you saw it and you got chills, like, oh, he's angry. Oh, there's a little bit of other than anger. He's might be even scared. And the
like
lighting
that.
enhances
That's important.
Anything you do to a close up. Exactly.
Just on the mental health side of things, if anger is not an emotion, it is a reaction to an emotion. Is what I've been.
Like that.
It's what I've been told, and like I've experienced it myself. I don't know if it's like, you know, a dead set truth. It's more of just a thing that I felt it. And I've noticed it, like if you're angry, you're probably actually scared. If you're angry, you're probably actually anxious, or you're actually something else that's causing you to react in an angry way.
Exactly. And that's kind of what his character was doing. He was initially very scared about something with Amber, or the Amber, the character, and his character was anxious and in a harsh disagreement with the other individual, that his scene partner's character. And you could almost hear it in his voice, but you did see it in his eyes. And it was honestly, it was a difficult scene to film because it was a very tight angle I had to do, and my batteries were dying.
Oh jeez.
But the urgency with the batteries dying actually played into the actor's acting. Believe it or not. And I loved it. And it has to be one of my favorite scenes that came out exactly as I had, and it was just beautiful.
That's amazing. So before we go ahead, CP. Sorry,
I had one question to that. So, because of the way you're presenting that you value the actor's emotional range, performance, does that impact the way you work with them as the filmmaker? Do you give your actors any leeway in, let's say, improvisation?
Oh yeah.
Or do you keep it tight to your script?
Every single time I do a new episode and I introduce myself on Zoom to the actor, I always say, if you can improv, I want you to improv. If you feel comfortable improving, it's not like I want them to full hardcore method act, but I want them to really get into the mindset of the character they're playing, because some characters are super complex that I have. There's a lot, especially coming up when we get into some of the villains. There's a lot of complex characters, and there's a lot of complex reasons why these characters do what they do. It's not just black and white. There's a lot of gray area, because that's what we are as humans. And what I wanted to do was show, I want them to be able to feel what that character feels. Maybe there's more than just hate. Maybe they're power hungry. Maybe they're sad. Maybe they're jealous. It's like, I want them to feel that. So I'm always telling all my leads, I'm always telling my reoccurring actors, if you want to improv, You can improv. However, I do stipulate that if you improv, make sure the last thing you say in on your line is the exact same as in the script, so that your scene partner knows where to pick up their line.
Oh,
Because
good.
not
Yeah.
everybody wants to improv. Not everybody feels comfortable. Not everybody's at that
Yeah,
point of
where
improv.
they have that
So,
ability. It's
right.
definitely a skill
Exactly.
in itself.
Exactly. So I always say, as long as the last word you say matches what's in the script, you can improv whatever you'd like.
That's
I like
cool.
that.
I can respect that. I think some of the best stuff that I've ever seen film wise is a result of good writing mixed with good improv.
Yeah.
And then some of the unfortunate stuff that I've seen where the filmmaker doesn't give any control to the actors. I've seen people who have great acting ability just
Right.
end up being rubbish, robots,
Yep.
just
And that's the thing. It's like in my head, I want them to feel that character. I want them to get in to the mind of that character, so they almost feel like they lived that person's life. And I've seen exactly what you're talking about too. I've seen people who are great actors, and they just stuck with the writing. And unfortunately, with that, it's like it's fine, but there's no inflection behind it. There's no emotion behind it. And you can tell if they, don't add a little bit of their own something to it. Like, one of
Mhm.
my favorite things is when I see an actor audition and they go full on. Like, they put on a clothing that would resemble that actor or that character, or they do their hair a certain way, or maybe they stand in they have their background is something similar to where another character would be. And that is a huge bonus point for me whenever I'm reviewing auditions, because that tells me that person really wants this role because they're putting more effort into it than, say, somebody who just comes in, says their name, and does the line.
Yeah, yeah. So it,
Yeah.
it shows that they're excited about
Yes.
the role, and if they don't know about it, they're at least trying to learn more about it.
Exactly, exactly. And it's like, see, I always say, it's like, if I can find somebody that has that goes that extra step, I can always work with them. I love that. It's like, even if maybe they have the look, they're not fully understanding what the role is yet, perhaps because I only give a certain amount of information about the role and it's a deep character, but I see that they're actually trying to portray that role. That's major bonus points for me, because that means they want this as much as I do, if not more.
Damn. That's amazing that you put that much dedication into the thought
Well, you
around
have to
just
be the one that
interacting.
you have to be the one that loves it. I mean,
That's true. Yeah. I mean,
first and foremost,
that's
like,
something that, man, it's just going back to some of the, like, I don't want to like lose these thoughts before we go on to something else, like the mental health aspect of that. Something about living with certain mental disorders, sometimes you never know if you truly love something. Like, am I just obsessing? Is it just a hyperfixation? Am I?
Oh yeah.
And then like the
Oh yeah.
knowing that you're that passionate is like, is this going to go away eventually? For CP and I,
Yeah.
we have that ADHD aspect of like, is this going to be a forever thing, or is this going to be just for a week and then I'm bored? And then like
Honestly,
being able to
yeah.
work with people, having the passion to actually power through some of those difficult interactions with the actors, and knowing how to communicate with them and learning all those different aspects, the technology, everything. I think you're safely past that sort of that threshold. Not saying that you have ADHD, but I know normal folks also have that aspect where, like, am I gonna still love this in a
Yeah.
year?
Oh no, I get that. That's when I first started this. I've never been diagnosed with ADHD, but I have a lot of similar qualities for those of those that do. So I've never been diagnosed, but um, I had that initial thought when I first started this. I'm like, why am I doing this? Like, when I first started, when I first got the yes, you can do this. Here's the camera. Here's the equipment. Yes, you can do this. When I got that universal yes, as it were, I had it in my mind that, why am I doing this? there's a lot I was thinking about, because there was a lot of negative emotions during this initial start of all this that I had. And I was like, am I doing this for me? Am I doing this for somebody else? Am I doing this to prove a point that a writer can become a filmmaker? Like, why am I doing this? And there was a lot of mixed emotions when that initially became, when I initially started. And then I'm like, but I kept doing it. I kept doing it. And I remember something that Jeffrey said to me. It was a long time. Oh no, it was about maybe a year and a half ago, when I was going through these moments where he said, "Okay, well, if you're not getting money from this, would you still keep doing it?" I'm like, "Well, yeah." He's like, "If you're not getting any awards from this, would you still keep doing it?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Well, there you go. You want to do this.
Yeah.
This is not something that you're trying to achieve a certain goal." And I think the only goal I, as a person, want to achieve is to see it through. I want to be able to say, I finished this. I finished this race. Even if I don't film anything other than Amber Oak, I'm actually okay with that. I mean, do I want to? Oh, absolutely. I would love to film more than just Amber Oak. I'd love to work with other filmmakers.
Be awesome.
But if I don't, I'm okay with that too, because I set a goal for myself to be not just a great artist, but also a good person. And I'm learning how to do that, and how to keep being a better person as I keep going through every single episode and every single season. And if that's, what it takes to get me to a point where I'm happy that I continued, then that's what really matters to me. Is like, yes, getting the goals, getting get people purchasing or renting an episode. Yeah, that's awesome. But I want to be a better person than I was yesterday. That is always my goal, is to be better. I'm not competing with anybody. I'm not competing with the latest filmmaker. In all honesty, I'm competing with the person I was yesterday.
Fantastic. Yeah, that's words to live by.
Yeah, and that got me thinking just about what we started here with the show. We started just like a 3 years ago, and I found myself kind of at a challenging point in my life. And a lot of what I was doing personally with the show is trying to go through these things on my mind, talk about them with other people, and I was creating a record of my experience that I could go back and see how I was doing at certain points. And there were certain times where we recorded shows and I was like, yeah, we can't put that one out. That was just too real. I went through too many emotions, but they became, because I could see them, they were recorded, they became something that I could watch outside of myself and go, hey, that was a really messed up space you were in. And I could start to do the detective work and figure out these things from my own life. And it's gotten to this point now where I'm like, well, what is this show all about? Like, you've been using it as a way to understand yourself better and maybe try to help other people, but it's stalemate. It kind of was like a stalemate where I was like, where do I want it to go? What's the intention of it, and how can it get better for me and other people? And I go, well, if you want to help other people, you're gonna have to use this show and really get better. If you want to write this graphic novel series that's semi loosely based on your own experience, and it's about coming out of these dark places, well, you have to have the experiences too. You can't just sit in the dark places without work. You have to come up with solutions, and that's I think the challenging part. How do you get better every day through your work? And that's the kind of stuff I think that motivates a lot of my projects. But they can get hung up because you're living in real time.
That's kind of how I was too. I based Amber Oak off of myself as a 15-year-old. That's Amber Oak. I always say Amber Oak is me. And for like for me, that's part of the reason why I'm so passionate about it, is because her story is my story. It's not, no, I'm not magic. But, um, but a
Creating
lot
is
of the things.
magic.
Well, hey,
Sorry.
Jay,
Sorry.
my friend's mom used to say movies is magic. So
Magic, so
yeah,
there you
Yeah.
go.
yeah,
But
yeah.
with my journey through, just specifically through filming this series, I've actually kept a very detailed journal about everything that I've gone through, because I want to be able to reflect back on my journal and be like, hey, at this day I thought this wasn't going to work, and then I can say it actually did. And
Hmm.
so I made sure that from the very start, like even before I started writing Amber Oak, when I first started getting into film, I made sure to start writing everything down, because maybe one day it'll be someone else's guide too.
Fantastic. Alrighty, well, we're going to go into the next segment here, but right before we do that, I'd like to show a trailer of. This would be the Time Traveler's Dilemma trailer. Is this
Yes.
is this a good one to show? You think?
Sure. Yeah. So that's the second episode of season 1.
Okay.
I was just watching on the sideline. I also watched the Stolen Legacy official
Yes.
trailer.
Yep.
And I did it without sound, but I see what you're talking about with the time period.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the effects. And even though I didn't really catch a lot of that stuff, I saw it in passing, and some of it's very dead on. It's cool.
Oh, I love it. Thank goodness. Awesome.
Let's see a real trailer with audio.
All
I'm
right.
gonna be a bit delayed.
Well, no, what I was gonna try to do here is a screen share, so you guys will get the audio through Discord. Just 1 second.
He's gonna do it.
Very
getting fancy.
Should be fairly simple to do. Please don't break. Okay, here we go. All right, so you guys should be seeing the display capture, and you should have audio. All right, I'm gonna full screen it. Tell me if you still see it. Do you still see it?
Yep.
I still see it.
All right, so I'm gonna switch to the scene now. Transition. Here we go. And here we go.
Have you seen my grandfather? He's been missing for 2 days, and no one's been able to find him.
Beth, your grandfather wouldn't happen to, like, own a farm, right?
Can you turn the volume up? I don't think I can.
Worrying about where we are.
I got it.
Okay.
When we are. We're not in the 21st century anymore. How would you know that? Everything else looks so modern.
Yeah, that's the only thing not adding up. All we need to do is find out where your grandfather actually is. If we just stick around here long enough, someone's bound to spill. How will we sneak around? There's not many places to hide. Someone will definitely find us.
I don't know what you two ladies are planning, but there will be no sneaking around.
Ooh.
Oh. I want to know who that old lady was.
I like so this is what pulled me in to want to show this one was the in the background here. I'm a sci-fi fan first and foremost, right? So I have a garage full of things I plan to turn into sci-fi things. And I see some of the technique here that I plan to do someday of this device in the background. It's so simplistic but says so much. That's the time travel device.
Oh, that's only one of it.
Yeah, pause it. Keep it on that thing.
We'll see. Wait, hold on. I'm gonna pause it in a couple seconds here. Do you mind if we analyze this, Ceara?
Sure, go for it.
All right, so was the cupboard being open planned?
We're gonna break down the mise en scene. Here we go.
Was the cupboard being open planned?
No.
Is that such a scientist thing that he just left? He left the cupboard open.
Well, so it wasn't. I think at that time I was trying to make stupid lights everywhere glow because I was having such battery issues. I was about to lose my mind. Like the day of, it was like all the batteries died, and I'm like, Jeffrey, can you please go and run to Walmart and get some more batteries? It was absolutely hectic when we did this scene. It was one of the first scenes that we did. And so I had remembered, I forgot completely when we did his scene and then the girls' scenes. I was like,
That's better.
oh, the cupboard door's open. And I didn't realize that until like much later in editing. I'm like, well, let's pretend he went back to his laboratory and closed it. It's fine.
I see.
Right,
I just like that it adds to it.
Yeah.
This actor has synthetic hair or dyed spray hair.
So that was like the best we could do at the time. He has like a gray silvery spray to his hair. It's like a washout kind of thing.
Okay.
Unfortunately, at the time that we did this with the lighting, I was stuck in a kitty corner. I had to literally squish myself into a corner to get this tight angle. So,
oh wow.
And so the lighting, I'm like, I had to basically sacrifice. Okay, he's just gonna look like he has glowing gray stubble. It's fine. He's a scientist. Maybe it's irradiating or something. It's fine.
He's got a robot hairpiece that like styles himself. He's the new side invention he's working on. No, I go, there's something amiss here, and then I go, that actor is way too young to be gray.
There was only so much we could do. I tried makeup. I tried so much. I'm like, you know what? It's fine. Mm-hmm. It's fine.
Honestly, I love the steel wool quality of the bangs.
Oh, actually, I love that too.
That's good.
I mean, it's kind of cool. This is like one of those happy accidents, like where in a sci-fi movie to see something like that's like a synthetic hair could be kind of a cool thing. It can kind of work. Where'd they get the clothes? They got a anchor tie.
So I actually was going to say something about that. So in every single episode, I have an homage to my late grandfather.
Oh, I love that.
He was one of my, next to my parents, he was one of my biggest supporters in my family. He passed away unexpectedly in 2018, right before my last Amber Oak book came out. And I said to my parents, I actually dedicated the episode to him, and I said to my parents, I said, I don't care what happens, every episode Grampy is going to be in it. So in the first episode we had I think it was a dragonfly. Dragonflies in my family is a symbol of my grandfather, because when he passed away, when we went to the cemetery to bury him, there was a swarm of dragonflies all around his grave, and that kind of became a staple for us in our family. So one of my cousins got a tattoo of a dragonfly, so it kind of became a thing. And so in the first episode, there's a dragonfly flag, and there's also a dragonfly metal device kind of a thing. Not device, a decoration on the outside of Amber's house. In this episode, that tie actually belonged to my grandfather. That was given to me shortly after he passed away.
I love that.
And in episode 3, believe it or not, a dragonfly flew by one of my actors when he was by the river. And it was not planned, obviously. I don't train dragonflies, but it was something absolutely beautiful. So
holy crap.
So yeah, one of the next episodes, we're gonna have some of my grandfather's military stuff to show a sign of I have a lot of his military clothes from when he was in the army, and we're gonna use that.
I connect with that immensely. Actually, I've been having some trouble getting through issue 2 of Void Sever, my comic book, because of its connection to my father. I decided to open it up with a character that was almost exactly like my father, to just sort of pay homage to him, or homage. And I found every time I go to work on it, I find myself getting really stuck in that mire of thoughts and feelings. And I guess on a personal level, I wanted to ask, like, do you ever find these connections to be something you have to get through in order to finish the creative part?
Yeah, I would say episode 2 was, this episode specifically, the Time Traveler's Dilemma, was very difficult for me, because it was about a girl's grandfather going missing. And it was a very difficult episode for me to write on a personal level, because it reminded me, obviously, of my grandfather, and I guess in some ways I was reflecting the loss of my grandfather in this episode. So it was a very difficult episode. Episode 3 was actually hard for me to write, because that episode was inspired by a friend that I met at camp. And he passed away when he was like 14. I was 15, and he passed away from cancer. And he inspired episode 3, and that was actually even harder for me to write because he was the very first person to support my books.
Oh, that's awesome.
And so I dedicated episode 3 to him.
That's sweet.
That's brilliant. I want to go deeper into this, but there's definitely that's definitely a deep dive thing. So let me do the segment transition real quick here.
Absolutely.
Oh yeah, because I have stuff on that too.
Yeah,
I like this. What is it? Why'd you go with the mid-century clock in the background?
It looks science fiction-y.
I grabbed everything I could find.
It's so science fiction-y though. I love it.
I love the steampunk, like a Spirit Halloween. I think. Yeah, I love trying to figure out where all these are sourced. You use the aluminum tape that you can buy at like Home Depots. They do spray paint an actual PVC pipe, or
no? That was just a bunch of tape. Because that pipe itself. This is all filmed in my basement. My house is 145 years, so everything looks absolutely terrible down in the basement. So my mom said, okay, I don't care what you do with this room, you have to tape up that pipe. It looks awful. And I'm like, okay, because this is right underneath the restroom from upstairs. So that's where this room is. So I had to make it look science fiction-y.
That's cool.
As best that I could. So we literally found everything that we could. This room was probably the most expensive of both episodes combined to do. And it took us probably 3 months to finish it.
Damn.
Yeah.
Alrighty, we're going in. We're going deep dive into the deep dive caves that we deep dive into.
Die.
Thank you. Oh, I did it again. Holy crap.
Give this man a prize. We're in the deep dive.
CP, say what you're gonna say. I just gotta run downstairs real quick.
Okay. So I think it's great that you use your work to connect with people that were important in your life. I find that in paintings and different things that I've done projects about people that I've lost, and it's a great way to remember them, but also it's great for other people too. Like I had a show last year. We had a shooting here, and our first one here in Maine, and I lost a lot of people I knew in that. Maine's very big, but very small in community, and I did a show about who had been killed in that shooting, and it's hard. It's I don't know if you saw the new Beetlejuice movie, but
not yet.
You've got Catherine O'Hara's character, who's now a successful artist and dealing with the loss of her husband, and she just starts making art about it, and she's trying to do these emotions through camera, and she's just screaming into the camera, in her studio, and they're like, "What are you doing?" It's like, "Oh, I'm trying to capture that exact emotion that I would have had when I found out my husband died, and this is days after the fact, and for the sake of whatever." And the person is like, "Well, that sounds traumatic." And it's like, yeah, I mean, it is and it isn't. It's a great way to go through these feelings, and I also find that it opens people's feelings up who have dealing with it in the same way, either if they knew the person personally or on other levels that they could. But we through that show, we would have moments, my wife would hug complete strangers, in these moments that were as sad as these things are sometimes to make the art. It's beautiful to remember people, but it's also wonderful how it can transcend.
Right. Yeah.
So I really liked hearing that. On a weird coincidental level, my grandfather is also a dragonfly.
Oh
my goodness.
My mother loves dragonflies too, so I was like,
oh, that's crazy.
All right, go ahead.
My grandfather was like a guy who just spent a lot of time alone. he just liked to read. He liked to be out in his garden, and I'm very similar in that way. And he used to hum, and he could hum, and he could get dragonfly on finger.
Oh wow!
And my mom always remembered that. So how she deals with loss is that way. She says, "So like my father is now a dragonfly, and so every time you see a dragonfly, it's which is common, but when you run into those areas where a dragonfly has come down to the water, Pacific piece about your grandfather, it is magical.
It is.
So I thought that kind of shocked me. I was like, oh wow.
That's the crazy connections. Like some of it might be geography too. We have a lot of dragonflies in New England, but at the same time, though, it's not too often I hear about people being attracted to them and actually enjoying them. Like they usually think of them as a problem. It's funny that you mentioned the dragonfly landing on your grandfather's finger. I did that when I worked at the Six Sense City on the bumper boat. The bumper boat pond used to have a ton of dragonflies, and I started to slowly learn how to get them to land on me. I don't think I ever hummed, but I would just like focus on them and stay really still, and they would just land on me. That's interesting. It's so funny.
I think that works too. Some creatures, animals, birds, whatever, cats, I know they like high frequencies. Certain frequencies sometimes will I don't know, attract, I guess the word would be different, or calm different types of animals. I also, the third thing I wanted to say to that, sometimes writing about or making art about these people can be difficult, whether it lands into something that could potentially be traumatizing, but you do it just to do it because you feel you have to, and there's a societal responsibility, like in the second case, you just want to remember them. But as you were, your father, Matt, and how you kind of got held up there, I find that's hard too. My professor ran into an interesting spot when he was doing his graphic novel series about his work being destroyed in Katrina. He lost all his paintings, and it was like right when he was starting his life. Scoundrel, and I deserve this, and he has all these different feelings.
Damn.
Yeah, it's an interesting story, and I'd always ask, like, why is it held up? And he said, it got held up because I have to write about my wife's mother, and it's just a brief scene, but it happened during this time, and it's important. But the problem is, my wife's mother was a wonderful, beautiful human being, but she got Alzheimer's, and she turned into a really horrible, mean woman that she was not previous. It just shifted, like what it did to her, and what happened with her and my wife and my daughter are very important to the story. But I don't want people to think that this is what this was what she was during this time, and it was brief. But previous to that, she was a wonderful human being. So he dealt with that for years. Like, how do I address this issue and highlight these things, and he's starting to break through that. But it reminded me of what you said about like writing about your dad. Like, you're like, oh, I want to pay legacy or whatever, but sometimes it's not that easy, right?
Yeah, for real. But
Yeah.
maybe I do need to be more subtle with it. Like, Ceara, I think you taught me something here about how he probably shouldn't be like the main focus of an entire part of the comic, but having it be more of a like little details here and there.
Easter egg.
Yeah, exactly.
Or, I've been trying to figure out some stuff with my writing because I don't want it to be linear in any way. I always liked filmmaking that starts wherever, and a Tarantino type thing where it's like starting in the middle and the end might be the beginning, and who knows, you have to figure it out, but it makes sense in the end. But yeah, how do you start somewhere in the middle, but also do these kind of flashbacks? Like maybe with your dad, it's pieces throughout the story. It's not just one book. It's
Exactly.
a part that would apply to the book, you know.
Maybe.
And I'm running into that too. Like, how do I do my youth flashbacks? Like, I for a while I was like, oh, I thought it was going to be its own story, and I was like, well, it might be better just to have it incremental, like pieces that run along concurrent with the other story instead of trying to separate it entirely like it's special, you know, like. But you, Kira, you're talking about that a little bit too, like how you deal with certain things. In you were talking about like all these characters are me, like, and I'm starting to realize that too. Like they're all, even though it's a perception of a father or grandfather, or I'm writing about a friend I lost, it's still always just me, because it's your perception of them, and I found that to be really interesting. Like,
because how I look at it is you write what you know, and that's what that's something I always live by. A writer is as good as their own experience. And I feel like for me, I don't think I'm a villain, but when it comes to writing villains, maybe that's an anger portion of me, or maybe that's a part of me that is reacting negatively towards something else. So in some ways, it's like whether you're writing a script, whether you're writing a book, whether you're writing from complete scratch, you can know so much about a writer based off of what they write. You can learn so much about their personality. Like honestly, they give so much away, in it's like they're almost vulnerable in that sense, because you learn all these emotions and all their weaknesses, and that as if you know how to look and how to read it, and how you're viewing it in that sense.
Yeah, I just realized just recently how deep the rabbit hole goes with that too, because I used to think this character's me, this character's the opposite of me, and then I started to realize, like, oh no, every character is you. They're just different little parts of you.
Oh yeah.
It's like at their extremes, I guess. And I was like,
sometimes,
wow, like,
sometimes it's extremes. Sometimes it's like for me, I can only speak for myself on this, but like for me, is that sometimes the characters are versions of myself that I would be too afraid to show, like actual, like other, like not necessarily like diabolical sides of myself, just like things that like they're for me. But now that I'm writing a story, I can put those things that are usually just for me and see how it works, you know, in a different setting in the writing.
And that's perfect. I was actually going to say the exact same thing, because honestly, when I'm writing about some characters, sometimes it's like you see a little bit about yourself through some of these characters, and you're like, oh well, I don't like this character is this way, I'm not like that. Well, maybe there is a part of you that is like that. You acknowledge that, but it's one of those things where I feel we should acknowledge the good, the bad, the gray areas, because like, that's again what makes us human. That's what makes us, we're flawed. We have our ups, we have our downs, and you know, I feel like, but that's, like I said, what I always say, that's what makes us grow.
Yeah, and I think you can grow when you say through the process. If you start to realize, have these epiphanies that, oh, I'm all these characters that I'm working on, even though I didn't know it. It's like, it's kind of, I don't know, it's learning something about yourself and seeing it maybe in a new way, that through that writing experience you could either learn more about, or maybe even help, I guess.
Yeah. And also, like, if you acknowledge something in a character that you're writing that you start to see within yourself, maybe it's something on a personal level that you can work within yourself too, once you acknowledge that, oh, I'm seeing myself in this character. Well, what about this character are you seeing, and how can you better yourself as a person and help yourself moving forward too? Not saying to get rid of the character itself, but keep the character and accept their flaws too. That might also reflect your flaws.
Nice. Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
Oh, we got the film back up.
Sorry, let me rephrase that because my mic was muted. When you see these characters play out the stuff that you've written, does it almost strike you even harder to see it like actually come to life?
It does. It is not in a negative way either. It's more of I'm more in awe that wow, this is happening. I don't think I'll ever get over that awe factor whenever I have somebody read lines or something, because it's gonna sound silly, but I'm honored that they chose me to film with me, and so it's an honor whenever somebody chooses me, because whenever I put out auditions, it's more on the lines of, they see that I have a casting call and they choose me, and they put, and when they put that effort in, it's I'm it's very humbling, because it's like they didn't have to choose. They could have gone with somebody else, and others have. But the people that stay with me, and some of my reoccurring actors who've stayed with me, I'm constantly in awe about the dedication for the Amber Oak series. I am beyond blessed to have them in my life. Like, sometimes when I don't have an answer thing, I say I'll get back to you guys as soon as I have an answer for X, Y, and Z, and they wait and they're patient, and it's so awing. It's humbling. It's the best feeling in the world, because sometimes whenever somebody is acting out a line, or they say a line and it doesn't sound quite right, I'll say, hey, can we add this or clarify this a bit? They're just like, sure, okay. And it's like, thank you for being flexible. And that's the other thing, flexibility is a huge thing, whether you're behind the camera or in front of the camera, because sometimes you have to do things a little bit differently, because sometimes when you say things out loud, that's why I love table reads, because you can fine tune everything right then and there, like write down. Like, sometimes at the final table read, I'll be like, okay, that sounds weird, so I make a note of that, and I'll make a note during rehearsal, say, hey, this sounds great, you're doing it well, can we rearrange a word a little bit or two, because in my head it made sense, but speaking it out loud does not.
Oh yeah.
On the
so that's, yeah.
Sorry, CP, go ahead. I had another question, but
Oh no, I didn't have a question.
all right. I just wanted to ask from a science fiction fan standpoint. In your writing, this comes from not having seen a full episode of your stuff, but do you account for the position of the Earth paradox in time travel?
That's more complicated.
Well, like, did it fit into the story at all? Is another question that I have trouble with when I write my science fiction. Is like, I want to explain the science, but I want the reader to be engaged, so I'm not going to just have a huge paragraph of how the science works.
So in that case, there's one of those things where I leave a lot of it up to the reader's imagination. So what I tend to do is give them the bare basics, because if I were to explain the exact minute details of everything involving the Amber Oak universe, I would be sitting with you guys for probably the next 3 hours. So I always say that yes, there's more to it, but I only add what the audience needs to know.
Yeah.
That's because it does get complicated. My universe, the Amber Oak I call it universe specifically because there's planets involved that are not Earth, and futuristically speaking. So I always try to give the bare basics, what they need to know, and that was something Jeffrey Jeffrey and my dad, who are both super science fiction buffs, had to kind of explain to
It's
me.
cool.
They're like, because I was like, I want to explain everything, and they're like, yeah, I know,
Yeah.
but you can't, because then your story is going to be super technical and not really that interesting.
You will.
And so,
You'll relate to this. I just had to mention before I forgot again. Like, apologies if you feel like I'm interrupting you too much. But CP also will get a kick out of this. There was a 3-page section of my novel that I had to turn into 1 paragraph because of the technical jargon I was getting into, and it was basically just describing how the ion cannon tears apart matter at the molecular level. And basically all I had to say was the wall of the ship disintegrated and pulled people out into space. I didn't need to describe the actual matter conversion of the actual like ionization taking out of each little material, and how rubber and metal and copper and all these different materials interacted with the ion cannon beam. I didn't need any of that. All I needed was the emotion. And then if you're into science at all, you'll piece it together. But if you're not into science, you're still engaged as well.
Right. And that was something that, something that Jeffrey's always said to me. He says, look, as long as you know, and my dad said the same thing. He says, as long as you know what is going on and you have it written down, I have a tendency to forget to write things down because of how complex my world is. They're like, as long as you write it down and you know for certain what your world and universe is, that's all that matters.
Yeah.
Everything else is the minute details. You don't need to worry about it. Just focus on the storytelling. Explain what's going on, but don't give them an entire astrological lecture.
Yeah. We don't need. Do we need to know
you're gonna lose people like me who don't care, and then the people that do care are gonna be fighting on the forums. No, that's not.
You just have to wait for Neil deGrasse Tyson to post on it, and then he clears everything up.
Yeah, right.
He clears everything up. He's like, yeah, actually, it's this, and then everyone's like, oh, okay, all right, Neil.
Right.
But do you think some of that is also like wanting to have a certain validity, like not challenged as a creator? Because I have a tendency to want to be an over explainer. Like I don't have to, but I'm like putting it all out there just because it's like, hey, I have a lot of post-traumatic stress from abusive elders, so I'm like, well, before you're gonna call me on this, here's everything, so shut up.
For me, my answer to that is I just love it. Like, I love any Star Trek episode where they explain how something works and why it works and which parts of the machine are doing it. I'm just like, yes, more of this, please.
What I liked about Star Trek is only the episodes when they went on the holodeck. Because that was like surreal. It became like some surreal like story that didn't have to make sense.
The Sherlock Holmes episodes crack me up. You have Data in the period accurate costumes, but he's still the android as well. It's just great.
Yeah, it's great stuff. Like really flips the the reality of subverts expectations. That's always the good stuff that I like. And you've done a little kind of holodeck thing there with your time travel in that episode.
Well, actually, I wanted to do you mind if we analyze this a little bit more as well as part of the deep dive?
I like it.
Screens.
Oh yeah, get mine closed out, so you might have to.
Yeah. I think Discord updated like right in the middle of us recording, which is all the buttons changed names. It's like, why did you change names? Let me bring it back up here.
And so, like, we can mention this at the end too, but just for my own personal information, where can you view these?
Oh yeah,
like where your shows.
Let me put that in our chat as well.
So the first episode is currently on Amazon. You can also see it on my website as well. You can rent and purchase on my website. The next 2 episodes will not be available until late April, May. They'll be readily available on my website May 4th. Amazon is a bit of a pain sometimes because once you submit the films, you don't really know when they're going to accept it. They might take, it depends on their, so they don't really tell you when. They just say like, oh, we'll let you know. It's sometimes you have to keep looking in on your account because they don't send you an email.
So it's not like you can put an official release date through them. You're just like, it'll be on whenever I like put the announcement.
But it's readily available on the website because I can just automatically do that that day or the day of. Yeah.
Nice.
Is it booksistersproductions.com?
I'm sorry?
booksistersproductions.com?
Yep.
Okay.
And how many current episodes do you have of this?
We currently have 3 episodes, so it's 3 episodes per season. So the first season is done, and this year we'll be working on season.
Oh, nice.
Reductive, but I wanted to do it in one sentence.
And are these like side kind of pieces to your writing, or are they inspired directly from the books, or
they're inspired. Yeah, they're inspired directly by the books. So the original Amber Oak stories were short stories, so they weren't very, and they were written by 12-year-olds. There was absolutely no plot to them. So when I was writing the scripts, I had to actually go in and make a broader story around it. So the I'm trying to explain it. So the first 4 episodes technically some of them aren't actually directly from a short story. Some of them are something that I based off the short story but elaborated more on because of the lack of the plot. So yeah, and some of them, because I needed to bridge episodes, were just completely manufactured. Like one of the episodes we're doing this coming summer is actually something I completely fabricated because I needed a bridge episode to get to the main point of the series. You know how all series have that one episode that has like nothing to do with the overall series. That's kind of what this episode was, because I'm like, I need to bridge this information. I also needed to introduce another character that was coming in. So it was so it is based on the short story, but whenever I tell people that, if they're like, oh, I gotta read the book now, you can, but it's not, most of them are not, there's no correlation.
That's cool though, that the way you're doing it. It reminds me of what I remember Todd McFarlane, who wrote the Spawn comic book. Everything that he would make, any iteration would be a little bit different. You know, from his movie to the they did an animated series, and he'd do it a little bit different because he said, like, why do people need to keep seeing all the same thing over and over? And for me as a creative person, why would I want to do that? Like, I'd want something it'd be more exciting for me to make variations of the story. And you were mentioning it earlier. How does this work when it's translated from show, film, to writing or graphic novel or animated? And that's something that a lot of people don't really wrap their heads around, because it's a no-brainer to be like, this book was successful, let's make it into a show. But a lot of these things, they work better in their format, and it's very tough. Me being a video game person, there's not many movies that are good games and vice versa. It's just it doesn't work for a lot of reasons. Now they're figuring out how to make it work, because they're like, oh, we can just make it based off the game and not try to have it like in New York City with human beings and twist the world to what the movie industry needs.
And I think to that effect, when you have when you're an independent filmmaker and you are on a wicked tight budget, like tighter than most productions probably, and it's you yourself. You still have to pay bills, like normal house bills and stuff. What a lot of people don't know and don't understand is that when you're looking for like locations or you're going to try to find every which way to save money. Whether it be, and that's probably my least favorite part of the filmmaking process is trying to find locations, because in my head I know what I want, but I'm not always able to get said location. That's why, when I transitioned to filmmaking, it hit me very quickly that the reason why you don't see a lot of exact book to film adaptations is because of budgeting. A lot of times you can't get the location. A lot of times you can't hire the crew you need to build a set. And so it's very difficult. So you have to settle with the best that you can do with what you're given. And so it's like, if I had a choice, that science fiction room, I would have had an actual set, not 140 basement. But it still works.
But it's so charming,
I'm glad
if you're going for that vibe too of like an older show, like they weren't always super sleek,
Right. Yeah.
I'm glad you did that instead of like a CGI like thing.
Yeah, CGI is hard. Yeah, it's very hard. I try to do my best to avoid anything CGI related or special effects, just because that can get very tricky, and rendering that, I will tell you, does take sometimes hours. Like when I had to render the third episode, because that had all the magic in it and stuff, it honestly took probably 5 hours to render. I would leave my computer on, be like, okay, it's fine, I'll leave it going.
Yeah.
And it's just because, I mean, I have a good computer. I have a gaming computer, but it's not like the top of the line computer for editing. That's a future goal one day.
You need the what's it called? Like the $600 hyper threading processor to do good editing. Yeah. But even my computer, which I've made like do streaming, still has so many issues with editing.
Yeah.
But I do want to, let's get into the analyzing this a little bit, as long as you feel complete in that thought. Yeah. I love, I found something interesting here.
Oh,
very interesting. No, I'm not going to be, I don't mean to be ominous. No, I just love that you have some behind the scenes stuff here.
Oh yeah.
And like you have the shot in the camera, and then I found that shot right here.
Yep.
And I'm like, oh.
So let me tell you,
so cool.
Our behind the scenes guy was absolutely incredible. He actually acted in the first episode. He had a very short scene.
Well, that's cool.
Chad Maurice, he's been one of my biggest supporters for the series, and like he's from like almost all the way in like Niagara Falls area, like so he's really far out, but he took the drive to New Hampshire to help us with behind the scenes photos, because when you're doing the footage, when you're doing the camera, you're doing everything, is get behind the scenes photos, and we always try to do that because that way you can see the fun and funniness, and joking, and the excitement that we all have, and it's so difficult to get that. And so when he came, we said, hey, would you be interested in helping us out with that? And he's like, sure, absolutely. And he went above and beyond. He didn't just take behind the scenes photos, he also did the slate, what that girl is doing right there. That's that girl is also one of my productions assistants. She's actually going to college for film stuff. That's awesome. Audrey, and she's actually a local slate whenever Chad was behind the scenes photos. So both of them literally just dove right into both these previous episodes, and they're like, okay, how can we help? I'm like, I love your enthusiasm, guys. And it's like, and they literally, half of the time, the weather was so hot this summer. Like all the days that we filmed,
it was muggy.
I'm not gonna lie, it was 90 degrees. I'm not gonna lie, it was so stinking hot. But like, what's really great is that they put all their all into it, and it was more than I could even ask for. And I'm so grateful to have had them on my side helping me out. And I'm hoping to have them, you know, futuristically too.
The boom mic.
They were so good. Yeah. Oh, poor Jeffrey. I felt so bad for him. There's certain like positions where you've had to hold that boom like that in that position.
He probably had like, he probably got a good arm workout just from holding that up.
Oh, he did for sure, absolutely. And I'm like, can you hold it steadier? And he's like, I'm trying. Like, I feel bad.
I'm trying.
Oh
my goodness.
One thing I'm noticing, you had mentioned early too, like, you know, you work with a lot of youth, and what is your plan, because kids grow up, you know, you have all these actors,
yes,
and you have this series.
Well, fortunately, we try to film as much as we can. Try to do 2 episodes, hoping going forward to do more and quicker. Fortunately, some of the actors that I have are well within the age range for their character. I don't expect to still be filming them as 16 when they're 30. So that's fortunately we're not going to be doing anything like that. But what's really nice about editing is if there's I wouldn't say a flaw, but say somebody looks a little bit too old, you can, with DaVinci Studio that I have, within reason, because sometimes if you do too much, it doesn't work very well. You can alter, like digitally alter their facial features, just smidgen, like juice wrinkles and stuff like that, and it works very well as long as you don't overdo it. So that's not something we've had to be horribly concerned about, and in recent filming seasons and stuff. And what's nice is one of our actors, one of our leads, Justin, he's oldest kid, but he's perfectly within that age range for his character and continuing on, because they're kind of growing up with characters at this point, which is really great. Yeah, so we don't have to horribly worry about it. Yeah.
That's good. You don't have like some like young boy who's gonna jump 1.5 feet in a year and his voice is gonna change.
Yeah.
Nope, we haven't had that yet.
I want to touch on the sepia tone that you have in the final cut of this.
Yes.
Helps like with the hair on her. Helps immensely with that, like showing up.
Do you know who that is?
That's you, isn't it?
It is me.
Okay, yeah. I was like, wait a minute, is it not you? Like my brain was like,
no, it's me. Yeah. So one of the actors, another instance of actors quitting. He quit, like, I don't know. I don't know what the situation was, but I guess he was unable to do the role for whatever reason, and so we didn't have time to find a replacement. So it was supposed to be a young couple talking, but the dialogue we had would have worked. So I ended up becoming a grandma for my granddaughter. And what ended up happening was the dialogue would have still been the same if you just do a different inflection. So I made sure to memorize the lines, and Jeffrey who called action.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, it was great.
I don't even know this character, but I like him.
Oh my gosh, he's so much fun.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, that is one of my actors, E.K. William. He was almost at the point of method acting for this role. He threw his entire character.
That's cool.
And it was absolutely incredible. He like full on board. I'm like, all I really had to do, no lie, all I had to do was hit play, and I'd say, okay, go ahead.
I know this is the same house.
Yes.
You know why?
Why?
Because of what CP has shown me for pictures of things he's worked on.
Oh boy.
The stairs back here had to be put up to code, so there's a 2x4 here. It's like
our basement honestly is like kind of together, I'm not gonna lie. And this part of the basement that you're seeing right now actually caught on fire. And
I shouldn't have been drinking. Oh Jesus.
The ceiling, like, yeah, the boiler, the hot water heater, I think, blew up, so you can still see on the very some of the black and dark gray areas. That's still singed. And so what they ended up doing this is my house.
What that is up here?
Yeah.
Oh,
So
wow.
and behind him too. And so what they ended up doing was just covering the boards and stuff like that, and putting up more plywood to hold the floors.
That's cool.
Is it on rock? Is the foundation rock?
Yeah, it is.
So this is
The rock,
perfect for the. It's perfect for the period that you're filming in. Like it's like it looks like they're just in their house. Like it's.
Yeah, exactly. And that was something we had to figure out how to do. What was nice about this episode is we have a time traveler, so anything that looks modern we can arguably say maybe he created from his knowledge of the future. So we were able to get away with a few things like that. But we did our best to make the basement and all the basement scenes, as that time period as possible.
Is there any I know we've been going through this trailer, but is there any clips or other trailers that you would want us to show that you are proud of?
Of this, I don't think I have anything other than I gotta say I am proud of the work and dedication. I love the behind the scenes photos, because that shows all the work and dedication everybody to it personally. So that's honestly some things that I'm proud of, because when I'm filming, when I am behind the camera, television, so I don't necessarily see everything. That's actually you're looking at is the Sadie McAllister.
Yeah, I was about to ask.
Yeah, you play that. That was the first thing that I was. They're like 3-minute episodes each. That's my first. I wouldn't say my first acting job. I had other acting jobs. I did that with the other filmmaker slash writer who got me into filming. And my acting partner there is Veronette March. She's the one who started helping me get forward with my series, and that's where we met.
Oh wow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Are you okay if we watch one of these episodes? 5 minutes?
Go
5 minutes? You cool with that, CP?
Absolutely.
You were able to hear the audio? Both of you? Both of you were able to hear it through the stream?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, through the
it's funny.
the screen
Yeah.
share.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I have it on slow still. Hold on. I was doing that just for the something playing while we were talking. I'm going to use all that for editing. That's why I was doing that.
It was cool. It was cool. I liked it.
Nice. I just put our logo in the corner just so that like it can differentiate of us presenting it.
Yeah, sure.
So the memorial's tomorrow?
Yeah, you coming?
Of course. I just can't believe it's been a year already.
You're telling me. What are we doing here?
You're gonna love this place, filled with a bunch of cool stuff.
I've been to a shop like this.
Hey, Cassandra. No, really? Are you best friends with everyone? Well, only the cool people. Anyway, she's really nice and she kind of makes the best cookies. By the way, I was thinking of asking Aunt Jenny to come by tomorrow.
I didn't know your Aunt Jenny knew my mom.
Well, she doesn't, but she has the gift.
What gift? Oh, come on, Carol, not that whole magic ball stuff again.
You know, why are you so stubborn? Everybody at least believes a little.
I don't.
Okay. I was just thinking, you wanted to find out the answers what happened to your mom, right? Maybe sometimes you just can't sleuth your way to the answers. Maybe sometimes you need some supernatural help.
No.
Oh, Sadie, come on, at least give her a try.
What's a half-baked psychic going to tell me that the police can't?
Maybe what actually happened to your mom? You even say you don't think it's an accident.
Stop it.
But if we just
found the answers.
Stop it. Look, I appreciate your concern, but magic isn't my thing, okay? I prefer reality.
Well, you know what I prefer? I prefer to have my friend back. You used to be so much fun. Now you're just like this black hole of doom and gloom.
Oh, yeah, sorry. I've been a real drag lately. It's called mourning, Carol.
No, this isn't mourning. This is refusing to let the past go. I mean, this is killing you. You need help, Sadie, like real help.
Can we not talk about this today, please?
Fine, fine. I was just trying to help.
I know. Thanks.
Well, do you see anything that you like?
Well, I do dig retro jewelry.
Well, then shall we dig? Oh, you know what? I love red. I always like the red stuff. You know my boss is a real drag. He won't even allow us to.
This is it. I've had enough. She's going on a bus tomorrow.
Oh, that's cool.
I told you about that Papa's boy.
I will take care of this.
You want me to go talk to him?
My dear husband, I am perfectly capable of taking care of this time my way. Kids.
Kira, can I pause this real quick?
Sure.
Were those your parents?
No.
Oh, okay. Were they just like, some people you know, or like are they?
Yeah, they're actors.
They're
other actors I know.
Oh, they answered to the casting call and everything.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so cool. Okay. Sorry, for a moment there, I was like, oh, that's so cool that her parents did it. Oh wait, I should ask. Okay, awesome. That's all.
Sadie, are you okay?
And Sadie has the gift. That's cool.
Sadie?
A very shop owner thing to do. That's great. Sorry, I'm commenting over it.
No, it's okay. It's okay. So,
we
fun fact.
The riff tracks version has to come on the second watch.
Yeah.
So the some fun facts about the intro to the Sadie McAllister Files. I did that with myself. The intro.
Oh.
I did the footage for it, and that was my first time ever doing anything
first time
cinematography
ever.
related. And yeah, I was so grateful for Killarney for letting me try it out, because we were partners for this series. We were working on it together, and I wasn't sure. So that's me. I will say that is me.
That's cool.
When I was little,
And your name's there.
I was wondering with your name.
Yeah. So what we did, we couldn't figure out what to do for the intro, and so I have an entire wall of photos and stuff, and these are my ancestors and my relatives.
That's cool.
And so I was like, hey, let me try something if you're okay with it. And all I didn't even have lights. I think I might have had a few like ring lights or whatnot, but I didn't actually have really much of anything. So it was my first time, and she loved it. I was so grateful for the opportunity to do that, for sure.
That's really cool.
So what is this location?
Antiques.
So this is, yeah, it's actually her house. This was a micro budget film.
This is $5 and a trip to McDonald's or something.
Kind of, yeah, basically. But we worked on it together. I got a lot of the props. I helped produce this. I Amazoned the heck out of everything.
Nice.
I also went to antique shops myself to find antiques. My dad contributed some of his antiques. And so we just set it up. And it was in her house because she's a very large house. She's from a family, so we just did it in like her living room area. Yeah, her living room area, and that's what we. It was exciting, for sure, exciting.
Was that her piano? I hope you didn't haul
Yeah.
that in.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, no. That's her piano. Yeah.
The cow's just pumped to be alive. Look at that.
I mean, it looks legitimate. It does, just the haphazard nature of this type of storage.
Yeah. She set it up, had an idea, and it was very, very well put together. With the vision she had, for sure.
And I think I have an answer for this, but maybe explain, why would you shoot something like this in build an antique shop in someone's house versus just find an antique shop and easily shoot, right?
Money.
Yeah.
A lot of it's to do with money and insurance, because especially when you're dealing with antiques and vintage things, a lot of antique shops themselves, you're gonna need like event insurance, costs hundreds and hundreds of dollars, so you need to be careful of that. Some locations are, I wouldn't say aren't safe enough, but because they have a lot of people trafficking and stuff, and they can't just close for one day. I mean, obviously, unless you pay them, they can do that. But trying to find an actual antique shop was a lot more expensive than us just bringing in a bunch of like shelves and and stuff like that.
That's cool.
Well, that's interesting, because I don't know like a lot of the the money side of things. Like, I know things do get expensive. People don't realize you need to pay money to shoot on locations, and insurance, and to shut things down. And with a controlled location, you don't have to shut anything down. It's yours all the time, and you can set up bigger areas for your equipment if need be.
It almost looks like how most thrift shops look anyway. Like it's usually someone's house.
Yeah, that's why whenever I'm filming, I always go to locations. Okay, can I make this a set? Can this be more controlled? So like 90% of our filming is done at my parents' house, because they have about 20 acres of land and a large house.
Oh, nice.
We use the majority of their land for our filming. Some other places I can't get that I can't do at their house. I'll ask the town itself. I've been filming specifically in the town of Ackworth. That's where I grew up. That's where the concept of Amber Oak was. And I want to highlight all the beauty that Ackworth has to offer, because it's a beautiful small town of like maybe 800 people, and one of the locations that we're going to be filming at this summer, I'm so excited to be filming at, because it's one of my dream locations. It's one of their historic churches.
Ooh.
So it's going to be absolutely gorgeous, and I am absolutely over the moon. So excited to be filming there. So so that's what I try to do. As a filmmaker, as an independent, you have to film at locations you know you can get. That's why whenever you're writing a script and you want to actually film it, not just set it aside and hope one day to film it, write for where you know you can get. Just because I was initially under the impression, write whatever and we'll figure it out later. I mean, if you had a lot of money.
Oh my God. That actually works for comics too, though. That's funny.
A lot of it.
I've written myself into a corner with like, oh crap, I have to draw a forest. I don't have time to draw a whole forest. I should have made this a desert.
Well, that's the thing. And like when I started writing, I had to rewrite the first 4 scripts several times, because I went under the mentality of, oh, I'll write for whatever location I want to get. That doesn't work, especially if you're on a super micro budget.
Oh, yeah.
If you had hundreds of thousands of dollars to waste, then yeah, you'd be fine. But when you're on a budget of like maybe $15K, it's not easy. And so you have to go for locations you know you can get. So the church was a location I wasn't sure if I could get, but it was one of those I'll try it kind of a thing. So that's why I was like, all right, I'm gonna go for it, because I was able to use the other locations in the town as well, outside of my parents' house and their property. So it's more in the lines of it kind of goes back to the write what you know kind of idea.
Oh yeah.
So right where you know you can get.
That's great.
Like one location I would love to get in the future is a castle. Do I think I'm gonna get it? No, not even a chance. you know.
Well,
Like,
kind of. You can go to Hammond Castle, that one
that's
over
true.
in Boston. It's kind of like an amalgamation, some dude's vanity
That's
project.
true.
Maybe they'll let you set up.
There's a trick though. There's a problem with that. So I'm a New Hampshire-based filmmaker.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
You whenever, and I've looked into this already, whenever you look at places outside of New Hampshire, there's far more red tape you have to go through, unfortunately. So that's why I try to stick with, like I said, what I know that I can do. So I know that you got to do more permits than New Hampshire allows, requires per se. So that's why I've been sticking to New Hampshire, because I don't have the funds for that. So it's like one of the, I'm hoping to eventually get more funding for bigger locations, obviously, when the time is right. But it's one of those things where when you're first starting out as an independent film, you have to take so many things into consideration. It's not just, oh, here's my script and I'm gonna film it. Great, but you need to have a breath
of fresh air.
I'm gonna just do it. Breath of fresh air.
Breath. Take a breath. Oh my goodness, I love it. We are. That's the breath of fresh air. Good. Good. I didn't get out of studio mode because it's confusing me.
Throw it away.
So first question I have that goes with this segment is, what was the biggest oh no moment on set? And how did you recover from it?
Well, that's a broad question. Trying to think.
Or maybe just one that comes to mind. Doesn't have to be the biggest.
Okay. I think the one that comes to mind the most is my equipment when with the batteries that came with this specific camera, I film in 6K.
Oh.
So and I film in raw 6K because it's the best quality for me anyway. My computer can handle that.
That gives you the most play with editing, right?
Right, exactly. And so the problem though is that it eats up the battery within like maybe 5 minutes. It can be a fully charged battery, but the battery that comes with the camera. I have a Blackmagic Pocket 6K, I think. And so it's one of the better cameras to use out there, one of the better quality video cameras to use. But the batteries that it comes with are very bad if you're filming within that parameter of the raw 6K. If you were just filming HD and not raw, you'd be fine for probably a good chunk of the day. But I would in theory go through, if I were to just use those batteries, I'd probably go through 6 of them in like maybe a half, just because they die that quickly. So I had my biggest moment was realizing that one big battery pack that's an external battery wasn't enough for the amount of filming I was doing.
Oh damn.
So that was in May. It was my biggest, like, we managed it somehow. I don't know, like a universal intervention, I don't know, but it was perfect. So the battery that I had was like lasted me, I'd say 5 or 6 hours before it ended up dying. I did not have a replacement external battery because in my head I'm like, it will be fine, this should last me the entire day. It was one of those moments where I didn't know my camera as well as I thought I did. This was also the first time I ever used my that length of time. And that was my first Fortunately, the actors I was with were very understanding and they knew that it was me. So they worked very well with me, and it was one of those Hail Marys where I ended up just saying, all right, these batteries are dying, but they're all I have left. So I literally filmed the entire end scene of episode 2 on dead batteries.
Damn.
Oh no.
That's incredible.
I'm gonna tell you, my anxiety had never been higher.
Holy crap.
Because I'm like, I didn't want to waste the actor's time or my time or crew time or any, like, because that's one of my biggest anxieties, just wasting. But they understood that this was an urgency and that we didn't know how much time those batteries were going to last us. I literally had to keep turning on and off the camera to conserve battery. And like I'm talking turning it on and off in between lines.
Matt can relate to that, right?
Mhm.
Like when we're ready to go and everything crashes on the stream and there's an update, and when the technology is the thing that's holding you up and you're primed and ready to go, and
makes me so mad.
Yep.
Like,
I just wish when they'd update programs, I wish that it would always prompt you so that I could just do it after the show and be like, all right, everything wants to update, but we can do it after the show. You know, never works that way though. Oh my goodness.
Yep.
So another question I had, that's how did you recover from that though? That was the next part.
I have a very strong sense of resilience and determination, and I think a lot of that has come through the challenges I have faced, you know, in episode 1, and all the challenges I faced in between. I just keep going. I say to myself, really, the only way this is going to stop is if I say it's going to stop. And that was something, that was a kind of, at the end of episode 1, I kind of made a promise to myself, kind of like a vow, that I was not going to let anything or anyone stop me from filming. Because I was going to see this through, and I promised myself that. And if there was somebody that their vision did not align with mine, then I them.
And they're out.
And so and so I promised that to myself because I faced incredible odds with episode 1, odds that would have probably broken other people, but if anything, it strengthened me. Like one situation with episode 1, when my batteries died, I had no other camera, cell phone, and I said, forget it. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna keep it. I said to myself, I said, this is gonna look terrible. The quality is gonna be bad. I acknowledge that. Let's keep moving, because you have a story to tell.
Brilliant.
And that's kind of what it boils down to is I have a story to tell, and there have been so many devastating situations that have happened within the last 3 years that should have stopped me from filming, but haven't, because I said, why am I letting this situation stop me? Unless there is a fire, my equipment dies and everything else burns, I'm gonna keep filming. Unless the universe gives me a sign, I'm gonna keep filming.
Keep filming.
Just keep going. And
Love
it's
it.
something also going to adaptability. Adapt to every single situation, because if you're not adaptable, then every little problem is going to stop you. And so it's one of those things. It's one of those things that I had to make a promise to myself. It was one of those kind of like quiet promises that, you know, it was kind of like something that my family and my crew knew that I was going, but I literally promised myself, you did it. This is proof that you can keep doing it. So keep going.
That's beautiful.
That's great. I appreciate that resilience. Just, I find personally, I have a high rate of failure, and I'm willing to fail. Like, high rate and a high tolerance for it at this point. And I find it's important for a lot of reasons, because if you don't challenge yourself to stick with things and deal with it as it comes, you're not going to learn about those hurdles if you never hit them. And making mistakes is so important to any creative process, because you learn either what doesn't work, or you find different ways to go around that, or maybe you find something that's just beautiful in the middle of it. Like, I never would have found out this way to create if I didn't just say, hey, I don't know if this is gonna work, but let's try it out. And then miraculously, like, hey, I figured out something completely new.
Yeah.
So I can respect that you have that resilience and commitment to just, it may or may not work, but it's going, it kind of is what it is. We're going to go through it.
And I think honestly, that's actually, I've been known to have a specific phrase on set, and it's actually listed as one of my quotes on IMDb, that I will always say I have a plan. And it's usually because I do. Sometimes it's a plan that I'm still forming, not gonna lie. But I almost always have a plan. And not it's not trying to me saying I'm being cocky. It's me trying to adapt within the moment. And
Yeah.
it's those situations, because you're always going to face some challenge of difficulty, but I don't know how to explain it, but those plans come to me sometimes in like quick spurts of a vision, or quick spurts of like that little voice inside your head that says you need to do this, try it this way. And it's like I always tell people, I'm not really sure where that's exactly coming from, but I know it's something more powerful than me, if that makes any sense. A universal thing. And it's like that's why it's like,
Yeah.
okay, let's try it. Let's try doing it. Try, maybe I'll do it this way. And then 9 times out of 10, when I say I have a plan and I act on that plan, it works out beautifully.
Yeah, I feel like I like to call that the flow. And a lot of times I have a tendency with an anxious mind to want to disrupt the flow, to want to figure out a way to control it, or to set myself up for success in a way that is conducive to being anxious, where it's like I'm going to create something, a situation, so this, and this doesn't happen.
Right.
You spend so much time worrying about all those things and you waste so much time, you're always going to get into a situation where something will happen outside of that. You can't control all of them. So when something pops up into your head and it's like, this is the course I should go on, I think I agree. It is important to, whatever that may be, to tap into that flow or wavelength, because I find those days roll a lot better than
they do.
when I'm like, yeah, maybe I shouldn't do it because this could happen. And sure, that could happen. But see, I didn't then do I got in my own way of the flow when I should just be like, quiet. It's just an experience. Go do it.
Yeah, and that's what that kind of boils down to, because for me, it's like in the back of my head, I'm like, I don't know if this is going to actually work, but it's definitely not going to work if I don't try.
Beautiful.
Yeah, and when I was talking about failure, I worked with a local community group to stop industrialization, big quarries from coming in basically next to our houses. Like we didn't want an explosive quarry that we could see and hear. And so we had our thing, we had our reasons, right? And a lot of people said, there's no way, there's nothing you're gonna do. Like, of all different backgrounds and levels of education, people come at us and say, it's a battle that can't be won. But it's a battle, in our opinions, that we have to fight anyway, because if we don't do anything, then we have this result, but we could at least try, even though it seems like there's no way. But towards the end, I've said it on the show before, we had people that said, hey, you can't do this, now sitting at the table with us.
That's beautiful. Yeah. That's cool.
Right.
You could, people started to turn their views just because we stuck with it, and we were showing them different outcomes that were beyond like simply it's impossible. Like that's pretty general to just say it won't work. But then once you start putting other things out there and other questions, well, long story short, we won. And my neighbor said that same thing. I said, you're really good at what you do, and I like how you seek information, and you know your team, your ability to do something is only as good as the team around you.
Yeah.
And he found different people of different abilities that he didn't have, and networked and did a lot of things right. But personally, I have a high tolerance for failure, and I can deal with losing at my own whatever egos like cost. But and because of that, and because I had that, because my wife had that, we were all just backed up against the wall, and we're just going to go with this thing, and it worked out. But if we had just said it's impossible,
right,
let our anxiety stop us. No, we went with whatever flow we were on, and 650 days later,
wow.
our town has the highest, strictest ordinances for quarries to come into this region now in the whole state of Maine.
It set a precedent
like,
too. That's the
I was
big
like,
thing.
how the heck did we do that? We did it because we just did it. We were willing to. And so with any project, whether it's social causes or making movies or art, you got to get out of your own way and be willing to be resilient and roll with it.
And you also,
you're gonna have.
Yeah, you also have to take chances. You have to take the chances, like you were saying. It's like I was telling my mom, it was kind of, I'm not sure how the conversation happened, but I guess it was something that we weren't sure about, a situation, and I said I gamble, but I mean, if we're gonna be honest, we've been gambling this entire time because something may not work. Every single choice we make is a gamble. We don't know. But one rule I always live by is the answer for whatever you're doing will always be no unless you go for it.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. Sorry. So that's one of my favorite things. It's one of my favorite phrases.
I live by that quote, man.
So I feel like it might be a good time to open it up to questions. If there's any questions from chat, we do have a handful of people watching.
Oh yay! Yay!
While we wait for those questions to roll in, I do want to ask a much more like smaller, more breath of fresh air question that we were talking about a bit before we started recording. So someone is trying to give you advice, and it's unsolicited, and they're kind of being a snob about filmmaking or film in general. And I have a friend of mine who comes off as a snob, but often he was just articulating his vision, right? He was just like trying to make sure that it was a clear vision that he was trying to create for his film. At what point would you say, like, would it be someone becoming a snob and versus it being articulating a vision?
Oh goodness, that's such a tricky question.
Fine line almost, right?
It is a very fine line because sometimes it boils down to how well do you know the person, and it boils down to, do you know this person well enough to know that they're being genuinely snobbish and rude, or are you perceiving the way they're talking just differently? Maybe they don't mean to be. Maybe they have some learning disabilities or whatnot that might prevent them from articulating their ideas, and so it might come across to somebody else as that way. And I think what it kind of boils down to is just take a step back. Don't always respond right away if somebody has that personality that you're not so sure about. Take that step back and make sure that you're responding correctly as well. I think that's what that boils down to, because for me, I've gotten quite a number of unsolicited advice from filmmakers or actors in the industry. And I personally, I don't respond to those. And I also keep in mind of who that individual is. So I make sure that I ask myself later in the future, do I with this individual? Because for me, if that person doesn't know me very well, how do they know that if the advice they're giving me is something I don't already know? Maybe it's something I can't do with them. And that's something I've had to deal with recently with some unsolicited advice. Somebody gave me some advice, and I already knew about the advice, but there was literally nothing I can do because I was unable to do said advice. But I never responded. I let it go because I said, there's really nothing more I can say on this subject that's going to make anything better. And then there are some times where, and when I first started out filming, I had some filmmakers, I wouldn't say give me bad advice, but it really wasn't advice. It wasn't advice that I time it was encouragement,
Mm.
and that was something I didn't really get. Instead, I just got unsolicited advice about, oh well, you're not doing this campaign correctly. Maybe you should just quit while you're thing.
Damn.
And I'm like, that's not what I need. And as a filmmaker myself, now being a the industry, I'm always trying to make sure I encourage other filmmakers as best as I can, even if it's not even my genre. I want to encourage them, especially if it's something that they worked their butt off for,
Mm.
because I've been there, I've done that, and I'm not going to go out and give advice, even if I think they could have done something differently. I'm not going to say that because that's not my place to say anything, unless they were to actually
okay.
outright ask me.
That's good.
And that's just my opinion. That's how I conduct myself. But as I always look at it, I always see that we have to understand that we're always going to perceive other people differently, just as they'll perceive us differently. And if we take account of ourselves and keep ourselves in check, that will help communication much better and will produce less bridges that are burned.
Yes, very true.
And advice too, I learned a long time ago. It's tough in the creative arts because, and this isn't really anyone's fault either. It's just something that happens. We give advice, but we're essentially giving advice to make our own work through other people's work. And if you have a specific way you like to make film, when you give that advice, a lot of that is giving your own intentions, and it's giving what you want.
Right,
So,
right.
And then a lot of people don't even know that they're changing the content of other people's stuff because, oh, you should add this element and do this, do that. But that would be what I do to make a specific body of work that relates to me and my aesthetic or ideals or vision. And I had a lot of teachers when I went to art school, and they don't mean to do it, and they know this is true. They will just say, hey, do it this way. Next teacher comes, do it this way. And then you start to realize that's the way their art is. That's the way their art is. And it's great because it's all kinds of advice. And like a buffet as a creator, I say, you take what works and what doesn't.
Like
you take what works and what doesn't work, whatever's, it's all presented. You don't have to eat it all and just know what works and what advice works, but based on them. But also realize that whether they mean to or not, people, their advice can be self-serving, and also it could also have the best intentions and come off as like a little too forceful, because someone like me who wants everybody to succeed, open with advice, because it's like you tell people things that work for you, and but then might not always work for the other person. That's a very dynamic topic, I would say, to get into.
We do have a couple questions coming in. This will probably be what we're gonna have to wrap up with.
Sure.
So we had Miss Lisa asked a question, but then Abso asked another question, and then Miss Lisa changed their question to another one. So we're gonna go with Abso's first, just chronologically. So Absolute Flutely asks, as a female filmmaker, who has been your biggest female role model, and what barriers did your gender, if any, have you overcome?
So I think the first person at the top of my head, and she's probably gonna cry if she sees feed, it's my mom. My mom is my biggest female role model. I'm not gonna lie, because I know she probably doesn't know this, but I have seen that woman overcome so many obstacles in her life, and it's like, even as a child, I saw her obstacles, like working 2 or 3 jobs just to make ends meet to help the family. And she might not realize this, but she has a backbone, and she's one of those women that she's timid. She's very timid, but she's also fierce. She's fiercely she defends what she believes in so fiercely. And oh my gosh, I could talk like hours about my mom, but she inspired me to be the strong person that I am today. And there have been, honestly, I feel personally, from my perspective, there have been barriers because I'm a female filmmaker, and filmmaking, there aren't a lot of female filmmakers out there. And unfortunately, I feel a lot of female filmmakers are shadowed by their male counterparts. And it's sad. It's sad. It is not anything that they're doing wrong on their end. It's just that's the industry. That's how it initially started. It was predominantly male, and to say it still is. I'm also getting into science fiction, which
Oh yeah.
is very, very male dominated. So I feel that in some ways I do have something to prove. I have some ways I do have something to prove in the sense that,
Just a side
that I
thought.
can do it.
Side thought for any female creatives out there. Look up any interviews with Karen Travis, I believe is her name. She wrote a couple of the Star Wars novels, and then she worked on a couple of Halo novels as well. Science fiction writer. She's fantastic, but some of her interviews, she's so cutthroat with like the way she's been treated. It's brilliant. So look up any of her interviews, from her.
Sure.
Yeah.
I'll give a shout out too. We've got a centipede cabinet here in the background that was programmed, coded, and it's the only female programmer at Atari in the late 70s. She worked with someone else, but the reason these things have certain colors and the whole design layout, it was marketed. They were trying to market games for women, and this was the only programmer at the time. And can you imagine what it was like? See, there's some things written online working at Atari in the 70s.
Oh my gosh.
All these programmers being the only woman. But Donna Bailey, first programmer in gaming history, and that's
awesome.
There she is.
So, do you feel complete in your answer of that question?
Yeah, I do. I feel that was pretty complete.
Okay. So, Miss Lisa Face then asked, can you remember a piece or pieces of art that hit you so hard it changed your creative DNA? And are there pieces of art that you go back to fulfill any sort of inspirational or emotional connection? So kind of a two-part question there, but also very similar. Like there might be a piece that hit you hard that you also go back to.
So I was also heavily inspired. And I'm not sure if you would I guess consider this form of art. Obviously the Harry Potter books and the Harry Potter universe really have all inspired me, so I'm constantly going back to them. But Nancy Drew, heavily inspired me.
Nancy Drew's great.
For like now it's not just the Nancy Drew books, mind you. It was also the Nancy Drew video games.
Nice.
So I remember, and I'm sure she won't remember this, but my grandmother, my Grammy Judy, she bought me for one Christmas the first 5 video games of Nancy Drew, and you can literally be Nancy Drew. It's a puzzle mystery game, and to this day I will still go back to them if I'm in like a creative rut, or maybe I just need a breather away from film stuff, away from books. I do the same thing with Hogwarts Legacy. I'm actually in the middle of playing that again.
Nice.
So I do that. I go back to those video games. And what's nice about the Nancy Drew games is I'm kind of like recreating, like going back to the original games where it was like everything was like 2D and stuff. But it's that nostalgic feeling. It's like that brings back those memories of when I was, when I was being bullied and I didn't have that outlet, and I had these games along with my writing. So whenever I would play a game, I'd go back to my writing afterwards and start writing. And it's funny that I feel like the majority of my life is surrounded by very influential women.
That's
so
awesome.
I love that. I love it.
And that's exciting for me to hear that you're inspired by a video game, and you go back and experience that and recontextualize that. I mean, this is what I grew up on.
Yeah.
And Matt and I talk about this. Games are full narratives. I mean, they're works of art in themselves now, and that's what I had to work with, was a bunch of moving little pixels, and the art actually sold the games more than the games themselves. So I start drawing. So there's this connection of these inspiring me. But yeah, video games, are I'm very fond of well as well, and that's cool to know.
So just sort of as a closing, what's sort of the best ways to find your work? I know you mentioned Amazon Prime. You're also an author, so if you want to shout any of that out, feel free, and I can provide any links in the Rise and Mind channel in the Discord, and then I can also throw some links in chat here if you'd like.
I think the best way to look for anything all in one place will be my website, because my books are on there as well as behind the scenes photos of the episodes. And again, episodes 2 and 3 will be out in late April, early May. I can't guarantee they'll be on Amazon during that time, but they will definitely be on my website during that time.
That's cool. That's actually how Ceara and I met. I was able to work on some of the covers of those books, but that's not why we're here. I just wanted to mention that's actually how I know Ceara. That's how I know Ceara, and it's awesome to talk to you as always, and it's awesome that
always awesome to talk to you.
We got the link there in the chat for anyone who wants to check out Ceara's stuff. That's the correct site, correct? Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
I've really enjoyed this conversation. It's nice to hear your process, and it's inspiring, and just to hear other people say, "Hey, just do it," you know, not like Jews, like, or as Matt would say, "Do the thing," or "I did the thing." Just go out and do the thing. Go get on that whatever wavelength flow, however you want to look at it spiritually, but just go in, ride that energy, and give yourself a break. Know that it's all inside of you.
Is it a good or bad thing that I applied that to using a chainsaw? I was like, I don't really know how to use this, but I'm just gonna go do the thing. I don't know.
Man.
As long as it's cutting wood.
I kept all my limbs.
Oh, haha.
Yeah.
Haha. That's
what?
It's a double entendre, dude. Talking about writing tree limbs and body limbs.
Oh, right. Yep.
You made a joke.
Yeah.
You're a genius.
What?
Matt's an accidental genius.
I didn't mean to. Alrighty. Let's see.
Yeah.
Normally what we do is we would raid another Twitch channel after this. And we're still gonna do that. But we're gonna try to find someone new, I think. See who's on.
But Texas Hula's not on.
Texas Hula. There's a guy named Texas Hula that we always raid, just because he's like on at the same time.
Because I'm hyper fixated on him for some reason.
You're his biggest fan.
He has a thriving channel where he works in his wood shop.
He does.
And feeds birds, I think, and
he feeds birds.
A very, very southern Jeff Foxworthy-esque voice, and he's an entertaining.
Well, he's not online, so
no.
We did just end talking about retro gaming, so we could probably just raid Sharpie again. That's easy.
Trying to see.
Sharpie's playing.
We'll keep it New England. Sharpie's
Maine.
Sharpie's a local Mainer. He is a legend in the sense that he has beat every Sega Genesis, Sega CD, Sega 32X, I think Dreamcast. So he's basically every Sega game in existence. He will fully complete, and he's been doing it for years. And I'm proud to know that a Mainer has been doing that. He has that commitment or obsession.
We're going to raid Sharpie. And thank you again, Ceara, for being here and doing this with us.
Thank you for having me.
Have a great rest of your day, everybody.
You too.
Go ahead,
Thanks
CB.
for joining us. See you in another time.
Bye.
Alrighty, bye.
Bye-bye.